And at my adult weight, even for most of my life until I was like in my 30s, I still couldn't fit in adult clothes. I would have to wear kids' clothes. I would have to sew clothes to fit me. So I was very small. And I grew up with a very fat family. I don't know if you guys know this. You've probably seen some pictures of my dad if you followed me. My dad is fat. My dad's whole side of the family, they're fat people. They're large people. And that's who raised me until I was like 12 years old. So one of the first experiences I had growing up as a kid was being around my family and having this like immediate realization that we were like eating the same foods and living the same lifestyle. And I was staying skinny as I got older and they were staying fat no matter what they did. And very often I would be eating more food than them because they were very, very concerned about trying to lose weight or diet or be thinner. And I was like a bottomless pit for some reason. So we'd be eating the same foods and I'd be eating more than them. And, I had this very, what they called a sedentary lifestyle, not a healthy lifestyle, the way people talk about it. I would sit and play video games for 12 hours a day. I would drink a 12 pack of soda a day. I didn't drink water until I was like 30. I didn't eat a vegetable really ever. I hated vegetables. Until I went vegan, I actually only ate meat, cheese, and bread. I'm 5'3". And this was like my life. So a lot of the markers of my life and my lifestyle and my food habits for most of my life were ones that we associate with fatness. And meanwhile, my fat family members, a lot of the things that they experienced were things that we associated with thinness. This idea of always being very conscious of what they ate, always trying to work out. And I noticed that very acutely that I was living what people culturally thought of as the fat person lifestyle, and I was very thin, and they were living the hyperactive, concerned about their weight all the time lifestyle, and they were staying fat. So this was one of my first introductions to this topic, and I started to get really interested in medical research, like journals that talked about this, and obviously I learned pretty quickly that our weight is tied to a number of factors, genetic factors, all the stuff you can't even think about, like political factors, like environmental factors. And it's not really, it's something you can control with great effort, right? Which often is not healthy to do. But yeah, largely it's not a switch you can flip. You can't decide to be skinny one day or, whatever. So this was something that I cared about a lot as I was getting older because I saw how it affected like my family members as they moved through the world. And I noticed that their health, their weight was constantly up for public discussion. Strangers out in public, walking through a fucking parking lot, people would comment about their weight, It didn't matter. People felt entitled to make these conversations as though their health and their weight were correlated in some way. And me, even at my smallest, where I looked sometimes like a skeleton, like when I look back on some pictures of myself, I'm like, oh, that's alarming. Nobody ever commented about my weight and my health. And one of the things I noticed too is that all these medical journals were like, it's actually way more unhealthy for you to be extremely thin than it is to be overweight as we think of it at all. So all these ideas about people being concerned with your weight because they care about your health, I knew pretty early on was bullshit because the way I looked, if you were going to be a person who was concerned about people's weight and their health, I should have been a walking red flag and nobody cared. Nobody brought it up. If anything, I got positive comments about it, right? I got people being like, oh, I wish I could eat whatever I wanted and stay so skinny like you. Like nobody was like, hey, are you good? I'm worried about your health, which I don't think you should do that to anybody, regardless of their weight. I don't think that's a good practice to do. But seeing how often it happened to my fat family members and friends and not to me, I was like, okay, this isn't actually about health. And anybody who tells you it is about health, I think they've got some shit they have to work through in their head because it's not. And one of the other core experiences I had with this is I had a friend whose boyfriend had the same doctor as me, which was so random. I remember us being like, oh my God, we have the same doctor? That's so random. And one day he came to our house and he was like crying because he'd gone to the doctor for some medical thing and they wouldn't even talk to him about the issue. They just talked about his BMI. And we know like BMI is bullshit. It's been radically debunked a number of times. But this doctor was like obsessed with his BMI and wouldn't even talk to him about the medical thing he went into. They were just like, your BMI's too high, your BMI's too high, your BMI's too high, blah, 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 over and over again. And this upset me so much because I knew that there had been points in my life when I had gone to this doctor and I had had a BMI that was so low that if he cared about that and thought it was real, I probably should have been hospitalized based on my BMI alone because I was like Skeletor, like walking around just naturally, not even trying to be Skeletor. I just was Skeletor. And I went actually and looked at my medical records and I found like the chart of my BMI all the times I've been to this doctor. And I had just assumed he had been smart enough to know BMI was bullshit But it turns out he wasn't. He just didn't care if you were too skinny, and he cared if you were a little fat. So these are the types of experiences where I'm like, okay, this has nothing to do actually with weight. What does this have to do with? And I think the things I came to realize is that thinness is associated with the political right, because it's associated with this idea of austerity. That's how we think of it. And like austerity is an interesting idea to me. I think I've learned a lot about it from economics, like austerity economic policies. This is a really big deal. This is something like the Milton Friedman Chicago style of economics are really big on austerity politics and austerity economics. And what that means is that from a government model, you don't do any social spending. You don't have a social safety net. It's extremely right-wing capitalist. It's just pro-business, pro-free market, laissez-faire economic policies without government intervention. And that's considered austerity economics. Your government's not overspending, right? And this tanks countries. We actually know that this is really bad for countries. And like the Milton Friedman economic model, we can't even do in the United States because it like violates the Constitution sometimes. But that doesn't stop the United States from trying to force other countries into this austerity economic model all the time. And every time we do this, it fucks them over. But this is like a requirement to do things like get an IMF loan or like work with the World Bank or sometimes to receive American aid. And this is super ironic because these countries usually only need this because they've been completely destabilized by the West already, right? Or by the United States. So it's this fucked up thing. But when we talk about the idea of austerity as a concept, it's heavily tied to capitalism and it's heavily tied to religion. It's heavily tied to the Bible, right? The Bible talks about austerity all the time as being morally virtuous. Don't take more than you need, right? Like, live a simple life. Don't be overindulgent. And I think that ties in with the idea somebody talked about earlier about like scarcity politics in the comments, where it's like, if you genuinely think that you need to be mindful of how much you are taking in terms of resources from your community, like food, wouldn't you be rioting in the streets? That's such a scarcity mindset. You think there's not enough to go around for everybody and it is somehow amoral for you to eat what you want to eat. Like that should be deeply alarming, right? So there is this whole economic tie-in with it too. So we have this like religious tendency towards austerity on the far right with like Christian conservatism. We have this economic trend towards austerity, right, with our capitalist politics. And what this basically does is establish restriction as morally good. And that's how we operate culturally. Restriction is morally good. And it's pretty wild to see that manifest in how we talk about people's weight, because there's this idea that if you are thin, you are doing the right thing, you are controlling yourself, you're not self-indulgent, you are morally good, and if you are not thin, you are overindulgent, and you have no self-control, and you are morally bad, right? And I think this is obviously a fucking really flawed way of addressing the world. It's absolutely wacky, but also it like ties into this idea of things being morally good or bad associated with our eating habits, right? And we hear this all the time. People are like, I'm going to be good. I'm going to get a salad. I'm going to be bad. I'm going to have a dessert. And this shit is like very, very disturbing for us to think about. And so I grew up obviously in the 90s and the early 2000s, and we had thinness as our beauty standard. Like I grew up in the era where Kate Winslet was fat because she was a size 8. And that is where that line of thinking gets you, and we see this kind of idea on the political right that the way people are supposed to look also correlates with this historical patriarchal kind of idea of what a woman is supposed to look like, right? Like, and men do bear the brunt. Men do experience fat phobia, obviously, but very often it's directed at women. Like Kate Winslet, mercilessly mocked for being a size 8 woman, for being too fat. And we think about what that means in terms of the political far right. We think about it in terms of patriarchy, misogyny. It harkens back to this idea of the woman as commodity, right? The woman as commodity to be acquired by a man to up his status. And historically, as a status in super Christian, right-wing kind of cultures, purity was considered a status symbol. To be virginal was to be pure, was to be good, was to be high status for a man to basically purchase you from your father with a dowry. So in conservatism, purity linked to virginity, linked to youth, and young people tend to be more petite, right? So that also ties in. So now you have this whole thing where people who are more petite, it's associated with purity in that way as well, right? So all of these are very, very conservative ideas. And the thing I think is the most interesting is we don't often associate beauty standards of thinness or fatness, or like the recent shift we had from being super curvy or butt focused, right, to being really skinny and boob focused, which is like a super also right wing beauty standard. We don't usually think of those things as being super political, but they are really, really, really political. And the right wing will tell you they're political, which I think is interesting too. If you've ever seen like Republican memes, they will often talk about how over on the Republican side, their women are so hot. And they will show you pictures of these blonde, super thin women with huge boobs and be like, look how hot our women are, right? Compared to the left, ugly. And then it'll usually just be a picture of like a fat queer person, right? And I think that that's interesting. So we on the left don't often notice that those beauty standards are associated with politics, but people on the right are conscious of it constantly because those are the tools they use to try to mock and deride people on the left, right? For not being palatable for that kind of patriarchal consumption. And that also ties into like queer beauty standards and how they're often very different than like straight beauty standards. And I think how enraging it is for like men existing in patriarchal spaces to feel irrelevant when they encounter a woman or a feminine person who's not concerned about what they look like through their gaze. And that's like a political act as well, right? For a queer woman or a queer feminine person to be like, your opinion's irrelevant to me is very infuriating because it threatens the established power of patriarchy, right? And the right-wing conservatism and the idea of the nuclear family and this whole lifestyle that they're really trying to push on us. So, yeah, I've just been thinking about this a lot and how, like, we should be really, really, really concerned every time we see thinness emerging as a beauty trend, because it goes hand in hand with a shift towards the Overton window going right, more conservative values. And obviously it's dangerous, too. It's really dangerous. Like, if you grew up in the era of everybody having an eating disorder because they wanted to look like Calista Flockhart because Kate Winslet was too fat, you know this ruins people's lives, right? And if you know, like the medical journals all say, that being underweight is way more dangerous for your body than being overweight, according to anything is, you know, this is like a health issue. This is actually a health issue, this pressure to look a certain way or be super thin. And yeah, so I don't know. I think that this is like something I've been thinking about a lot that is very, very upsetting to me personally. And I think it's something that like we on the left need to be more conscious of when we talk to other people and about other people. And I think too, this idea that you could tell what somebody's lifestyle is like or what they're up to based on how they look is a problem too. And I see this sometimes in left-wing spaces. People will be like, well, it's good to be physically fit and active and strong. And for sure, yeah, it is. But as a person who is very thin and is not super physically fit and active and strong, I have been more at different points in my life, not right now, certainly. The idea that you can look at somebody and tell anything about them in that is totally false. Like, my obese father is way more physically fit and strong and active than me, right? So I don't know. This kind of thing is something I think we need to really check and be aware of in the left, and how those beauty standards do represent things politically and how we need to make sure that we don't fall into them. I know a lot of people even on the left who are like, well, but health, and they will go back to that. And I'm like, this is such a fallacy in so many ways. It's not even factually real, first of all. Second of all, you know, it denies the reality of how all this pressure on these beauty standards like actually does affect people's health in material ways. So yeah, I don't know. It's very, yeah, and this person said obesity is heavily linked to social and economic inequality. That's another thing. It affects people's material conditions. As a Marxist, that's something we should be aware of. Like, fat people are disproportionately less likely to get jobs, right? And that's why whenever I see somebody I know who is fat, who is like, well, I'm going on a weight loss journey, I'm like, okay, well, I can't judge you for that. I'm not qualified to judge you for that, because what am I going to tell you, that you're not going to get treated differently in society if you're skinny? You are. And that's fucked up. And I can't judge how anybody responds to their own oppression. But, you know, that's a real thing that a lot of people consider. So, I don't know. It's very, very, very interesting, and something that I care a lot about. I think just moving through the world, being so small and with fat family, and knowing that we were not doing anything different. I think that's the biggest thing, that fallacy of like, well, what are you doing? Well, it's all in your control. And growing up being like, these people are doing way more than me. They're caring way more than me. They're trying way harder than I am to adhere to these social standards of what people are telling them is appropriate and not appropriate. Their doctors are telling them this, right? Their peers are telling them this. The media is telling them this. And I am literally every stereotype that weird right-wing freaks like to levy at like lazy fat people, and I just happen to be skinny. And like, it just happened to be that way. And it's a very weird feeling to go through the world with. So I think we should care about that a lot. And I think we should view it as political. It is political. And one of the things I do like is like the growing trend of people calling out like pedophilia in particular in our beauty standards. I like that because even though men will do creepy things like, oh, wait until she was 18, they actually don't like being branded as pedophiles. And I feel like that's actually a pretty effective rhetorical tool to levy at them when we talk about things like, why do you want all of these women to be super petite and child size? Like, that's weird, you know? I don't know. I think that that's like an interesting kind of situation. But you being an ML while presenting like that is really off-putting to serious Marxists. Okay, wait, I want to talk about that because we're talking about beauty standards anyway. So what does that mean? What do you mean by that? I would love to know what that person has to say about that. If they come back. But yeah, no, I don't know. They were doing the thing to Chapel Roan that they did to you. Yeah, I know. They did it to Chapel Roan first, actually. And then they did it to me, and then they did it back to Chapel Roan. It's pretty interesting. Because optically, no one is taking you seriously. I mean, what do you think I need to wear a business suit? Is that how a serious Marxist looks? I think this is also funny because this is something that right-wingers do when they meme. So they'll make the memes about communists, and it'll be like a pink-haired yerba mate drinking like feminine person with like a septum ring, and it'll be like, Che Guevara, I love you. And then they'll make a meme that's Che Guevara being like, I literally would have you killed. And then communists will actually take these memes and rework them. So Che Guevara is like, thank you, comrade. Your support means everything to me in these trying times. And like, that's actually the Marxist position. Like the Marxist position, if you actually care about this, is to meet the working class where they are. And guess what? The working class doesn't look serious or presentable by capitalist kind of structural standards most of the time. The working class looks tired, disheveled, messy sometimes. The working class does look put together sometimes. The working class has dyed pink hair sometimes, or reverse trihawks, or septum rings. The working class is myriad in their appearance, and that's where you want to meet people. Like, that is the most Marxist thing you could do, is meet people where they are, you know? So that's actually not, I don't think, a Marxist analysis, you know? Yeah. I mean, the Marxist approach is a systemic and material understanding of capital. Right. And I think, though, that people's appearances, right, to judge somebody based on their appearance is not a judgment of them based on capital. It's not, right? But I mean, unless you're doing something where you're like, oh, these beauty standards are specifically associated with power structures, right? So I'm sorry, having like dyed red hair and a nose ring isn't associated with a power structure's attempt to oppress people. That's not real. You can look however you want and be a Marxist. That's totally fine. And then let everybody know, you can look however you want and be a Marxist. You can look like every meme right-wingers put together of how ridiculous the left is. And I think that's cool. I think that's cool that you look like that. It is also white supremacy. It is white supremacy. It's a white beauty standard of femininity. It's very, very weird. Yeah, so these beauty standards, they do play out in political ways. Liberal corporatists do. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, I just woke up thinking about that a lot because I saw Jessica Blair posted a video that was like, oh, all these people are like this trend towards thinness, but not me. And I'm like, I love Jessica Blair. I think she's great. And I saw that and was like, this is important. This is important to talk about, I think. Yeah, so, very interesting things to consider. Do you guys have anything else that we can talk about for maybe a few minutes while we're on the live? Any questions? Anything we should talk about? I was going to post a video about it, yeah, but all my videos I tried to record were like 8 minutes long, and I was like, fuck, I got to get this like more palatable. I don't know that jewelry company. I do have a podcast. It's called Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. As the owner of a plus-size boutique, I've been screaming this for years. Yeah, it's, we can talk about the filibuster thing. Do you guys know that I'm so naive? Like, I'm so trusting. I really thought he was filibustering. I thought it was an actual filibuster. I was like, wow, Cory Booker's actually doing a filibuster. That's something, I guess. And then everyone was like, he's not. There's nothing up for debate. There's no bill up to be passed. There's no vote today. And I was like, what? It's almost too spot on. It's the performative activism thing is almost too spot on. I think that there's an opportunity here. This is something that on my podcast, actually, my co-host and I got into a fight about, because I'm like, I think that average people are starting to realize how useless the Democratic Party is. Like, I saw people who weren't communists, weren't socialists, who were really upset with the Cory Booker thing too. They're just like, this is ridiculous. And I think this is a radicalizing opportunity for a lot of people. I think more and more people are starting to realize the Democratic Party is not going to save you. Yeah, of course I'm still yapping online. You're on the app where people yap. You're on the Yap app, babe. Come on. So, I think that it is a good opportunity to remind people that you do have options outside of the Democrats and the Republicans politically. You do. You definitely do. I'm not a person who thinks electoral politics will save us, which is funny when everybody's like, you try to convince everybody how to vote. I'm like, why would I do that? I don't even care about that. I don't think that's going to save us. Why would I invest all my time and energy into that? But if you are a person interested in electoral politics, there are communist and socialist political parties that are running candidates. And they are an option. They are a viable option. And the reason why so many people think they're not a viable option, it's not constitutionally written in anywhere that we can only have the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm pretty sure the Republican Party started as a third party, actually, and then they rose to prominence. So I think that, like, you can have a new third party emerge if you are a person who concerns themselves with electoral politics. And there have been socialists that have been seated to electoral positions. The problem is the Democratic Party often sues them to keep them off of ballots. It's like democratic repression, basically. So I think there are these opportunities right now where, if you are more revolutionarily minded, there are definitely political parties around you doing work towards that goal that you can join. And if you are not there yet, but you are still electorally minded, but recognize that the Democrats aren't going to help you and we need a true left-wing political party, even within this country, if you're a reformist, there are still political parties out there operating and doing that, and they need support. And they have won elections even with limited support, and they will win elections even with more. So I think this is a really good opportunity if you are somebody who is starting to wake up to the fact that the Democrats are useless. And they're useless on purpose. They're useless because they can't do anything that threatens wealth and power, right? That maybe it's time for you to give up on them and switch allegiance somewhere else. I don't know. It's up to you. But there are other options. So I kind of think that is a good thing for us to start to remind people right now. Those aren't your other only options. The only people who are trying to convince you they are them. Right? So, okay, Caleb. What the fuck's going on with Caleb? Annoying. Hold on. How do I... Okay. Caleb's gone. Caleb was spamming. Caleb gone. Okay. No, I don't usually respond to my DMs. I'm really hard on them. Sorry, I probably won't. Just being honest. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that is a what was a dog whistle? Caleb? Was Caleb a dog whistle? Yeah. Let's make Caleb a left-wing dog whistle. He'd be like, Caleb. The tariffs for China, I don't think so. You guys know we do stainless steel jewelry, and steel actually got a big tariff a while ago for construction stuff because it's so sturdy, but we use it just for jewelry. And it wasn't that bad. It was totally fine. I don't know. Knitting cult lady. Who's knitting cult lady? I missed it. I think I have more in common with a right-wing extremist or a moderate. I don't think I have anything in common with either of those people. Like, at all. I think that's a false dichotomy. Knitting cult lady's the best? Is that who we like? What's her cult? Okay, I'll look. I can't even go on my fucking, I can't use TikTok as a user anymore because I just keep running into weird videos about me that make no sense. So, I don't know. Keys was some type of, maybe, I don't know. Oh, she was in Children of God, the cult. Oh, interesting. Leaving cults, different ones, MAGA, military, Church of God, Moonies. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. Compares it with U.S. military. That makes sense. Selkie. I know they're a small clothing brand. Selkie. I know about that. Moderates are right-wing extremists. I think so. Yeah. I think Democrats are right-wing extremists. So, I think people are starting to wake up to that, I'm glad that candid conversations about politics are helping people kind of come around. So Bernie Sanders. So, okay, I'm going to talk to you guys about Bernie Sanders. So, one thing about me is that my politics have been pretty consistent for a long time. So I would say since I was 13 years old, I'm 38 now, I've considered myself some sort of communist, and just the type of communist changes sometimes. The more information I learn, basically what type of communist I identify more with changes along with it. So when the Bernie Sanders kind of thing was first happening and everybody's like, get Bernie Sanders elected to the, in the Democratic primaries or whatever, there was actually a lot of talk around that time about California no longer having an open primary. And this is the kind of thing where I'm like, sometimes I'm an electoral politics hypocrite. I've never thought electoral politics will save you, but I've also voted in every single election. So, because I'm like, oh, why not? So do what you will with that information, right? None of us is a perfect adherent to our own political ideology. I actually even registered Democrat. I was Peace and Freedom Party, and I registered Democrat to, just in case California did decide to close their primaries, so I could vote for Bernie in the primaries. And I did. I voted for him in the primaries for the Democratic Party. They ended up not closing it, and then I just never bothered re-registering because it didn't matter because I could vote for whoever I wanted. But yeah, I just re-registered Peace and Freedom Party this year again. You got to show your support. So I did that for Bernie, but I was never excited about Bernie. And I think one of the things about having left-wing politics, actual left-wing politics, is people always say this, it means being correct too early, right? You're right about things too early. So that means that when you're a communist, especially when you move through public spaces, you kind of learn to censor yourself and like dole out information in small bits because you want to meet people where they are and you don't want to freak people out. So when the Bernie Sanders thing was happening and everybody was super excited about Bernie Sanders around me, I was like, yeah. Like they would ask me, like, oh, are you so excited about Bernie Sanders? I'd be like, he's fine. I don't love his takes on Israel. And that would be what I would say to people. So if you knew me around then, you probably heard me tell you that about Bernie Sanders. I don't like his takes on Israel. But at that time also, it was a way more socially acceptable to be a Zionist than it is now. Everybody was a Zionist. It was considered morally reprehensible to not be a Zionist, like even when Bernie Sanders was a candidate. And that's been one of the most promising shifts I've seen politically in our culture, is that it seems like the Palestine issue has brought people around to the side of good and justice. And that has been so inspiring to me because I'm like, okay, it can change. He's not pro-Palestine. No, he is not. I'm sorry. And this is, if that person said, I'm not an American, he's not pro-Palestine. No. And this is why Americans don't really realize this, but we have two right-wing political parties. So Bernie Sanders would be considered probably center or center-right anywhere else in the world. And in the United States, he's considered really left-wing compared to our regular politics, which is pretty harrowing to realize. And most Americans don't realize that. And I knew that intellectually, but I also didn't leave North America until I was like 35. And the first time I went outside of North America, I was in Spain, and I saw Communist Party like posters up and around. I went to a street festival, and the Communist Party, one of them was there with like a huge banner, and all these people were cheering. I was like, oh, this is in Europe even. This isn't even a place that's been heavily victimized by American imperialism or Western imperialism, right? And it's way more socially acceptable to be a communist or a socialist there. That's like considered, yeah, just being left-wing. Yeah, that's just the left there. No big deal. That, I was even like, oh, I thought I knew, but like seeing it, you even feel different. So yeah, I think Americans have a very uniquely fucked political understanding of our positioning. It's very, very strange. So yeah, Bernie Sanders, yeah, not pro-Palestine, but still considered a far-left radical in the United States somehow. It's pretty interesting. Okay, you live in Spain, and that's the extreme. I was in Bilbao, to be fair. Bilbao's maybe the most punk rock city I've ever been to in my life. So, I like that. Opinions on Hassan Piker. I've never watched a Hassan Piker stream, so I don't really know. People sometimes get really confused when I tell them I've never watched. Like when the Cat Black thing was happening, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know who this is. Everybody was like, you're lying. And I'm like, I don't like watch YouTube like that. Like I don't do that. So I don't like watch a lot of this stuff, if that makes sense. Right. So I don't watch Hassan. I've DM'd with Hassan a couple of times because one time some people try to like pit us in a fake fight against each other. And I DM'd him to be like, sorry, people are weird. And he was like, that's okay, bro. That's cool. And we like follow each other on TikTok. So I've seen like clips from his stream on TikTok sometimes, but I don't know enough about him to have like a strong opinion, basically. Okay, who else we got? You know any punk bands from Bilbao? No, but I did see some punk bands play in Bilbao, and it was really cool. But I can't remember their names or anything. Also, I've talked about this before, but I was in Spain. My Spanish is like not great, but my Spanish, like I can speak enough usually to communicate what I need. And in Bilbao, nobody could understand anything I was saying. And I'd been to like Madrid, Valencia, Barcelona, and everybody could understand me. And then I get to Bilbao and everybody's like, what the fuck? And then somebody finally was like, oh, there's like such a different accent here. It's the equivalent of like going to Ireland, basically, and speaking English. Like, yeah, it's Spanish, I guess, but it's like very, very different. So that was like interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, what else? We got a few more minutes. South Korea right now. Where is Jill Stein? Okay, you guys, like, I don't know. I didn't even vote for Jill Stein. I voted for Claudia De La Cruz, first of all. But second of all, the funny thing about the internet and these positionings is that there's this effect that happens where when two people talk to each other, it ends up polarizing them often into opposite corners of a ring. So when I talk about Jill Stein, I have to sound like a Jill Stein superfan, but it's because people say the weirdest shit about Jill Stein and I care about facts, and like none of it's true. So like I have my own critiques of Jill Stein. Like I think Jill Stein's weird about 5G. I think she's kind of anti-technology sometimes in a way I don't think is, great. But the things that people get mad at Jill Stein about, I'm just like, what? Like where did you fucking come up with that? Like where's Jill Stein now? I'm like, she's been doing like live streams and marches and attending, she's been everywhere. What? That just tells me you're not looking for Jill Stein, which is fine. You don't have to look for Jill Stein, but why act like she's not around when you didn't even bother to look? People also talk about how like, oh, Jill Stein only comes out every 4 years to run for president, which like she doesn't even run every 4 years. And also, hello, in the 90s, the reason why she got into politics is because she was a huge environmental health activist. She was doing all this activism work all throughout the 90s. And people don't know that. And they just believe random memes they see online about her not doing anything. And I'm like, why don't you guys critique her for something real? Like the 5G thing. That was weird. I don't know. You could be mad about that. But just to say all these weird things that aren't true about her, I'm like, huh? Why do you do that? It's very, very weird. But that's what people do. They just like see something in a meme and run with it like it's true. It's very weird. I have not been to Ireland, but I kind of want to go to Ireland. Actually, a person I was dating, we were talking about doing a trip where we go to Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, but don't go to England. We thought that would be funny. I don't know. Yeah, they're unserious people. I know. I'm like, I'm not even like a Stein super fan, but you guys end up backing me to a corner where I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'd die for her. I don't care. Just like on principle alone. Because I'm like, what are you saying? None of this makes sense. So yeah, that's like how I end up basically. I'm not any politician super fan ever, but I have like an ideology, and people who have my same ideology, I will support. People who are pretty close to my ideology, I'll probably support, Yeah, as a Scot, I approve of that trip idea. Yeah, we were like, we can't go to England. Fuck them. Right? But I think it would be fun to do. I am going to go back to Spain this summer, but politically, I'm like, oh, is that irresponsible? Because there's been a lot of anti-tourism activism there. So I'm not sure. I think all tourism is probably unethical, right? And I don't really know how to engage with it. Oh, I don't know. So, oh wait, you were talking to a friend about the time I got CIA'd. Yeah, I think I got CIA'd. It's so funny. Oh, which necklace did you get? I wouldn't stay at an Airbnb. I would stay at a hotel. I'm not an Airbnb person. I'm a hotel person. So at least I have that going for me. Oh, Santanista. Okay, yeah. Come to Spain, just say no to Airbnb. Okay, good. Okay, that's what I was thinking. And the person I was dating was like, we can stay in Airbnb. And I was like, there's something you should know about me. We don't do that. And they were like, oh shit, okay. It was like funny. Internet culture. I actually pitched a book to my agent called 2 Million Followers Can't Be Wrong, How the Internet Ruined My Life. But it was funny because they were like, oh, nobody's really sympathetic to bad things happening to influencers. And I was like, I'm not an influencer. I don't even make money off this. And they were like, yeah, it's just not going to land. I'm so sorry. It was like funny though. Am I going to stay living in America? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that most places I could afford to move. the reason why I can afford to move there is because they are cheaper. And if they are cheaper, me coming in as an American with American dollars is probably bad for them. That's my thing about moving. It's not like I can afford to move to another wealthy country. So I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't think that, who would take me? What country would take me? You know what I mean? China, maybe. But I'd have to learn Mandarin or Chinese. Podcast episode about the Yugoslavian wars. I've seen you say that. I would do that. I've added that actually to my list. The American dollar is not worth as much as it was 2 days ago. True. That is true. Would you move your business? No. In 5 years, I'm looking to leave my business. So, might be. I speak a little Spanish. I jokingly speak it with a Valley Girl accent all the time. Yo hablo un poco español. Like that. But usually when I'm in a place, I don't speak it like that. That's just how I speak it in California, because I think it's funny. I'll retire from the business, but I think I'll probably work as a bartender, will be what I do. Yeah. I would give the ownership to everybody who stayed at the company. Yes, I've been to Mexico a lot. I like Mexico a lot. But same thing. They don't want us there. Like Mexico City, favorite place I've ever been to on earth. Probably won't go back though, because they don't like us being there. And I get it. So, I don't know. You might get funny bartender stories, but I'll probably also not be on social media at all. That's like freedom to me. What's your country where they have the 3-day Communist Party festival? I've never been to Chile, but I would go to Chile. Puerto Vallarta is one of the places that's so fucked over by Americans moving there. Oh, I went to Puerto Vallarta and I was like, oh, this feels bad to me. Feels like we shouldn't be here. So, I don't know. Oh, yeah. What was the Jade Omar question as a new viewer that you had? Oh, what about thinness in the right wing? Oh, yeah, we did a convo about that already. We kind of closed it up. But just the idea that when you see thinness reemerge as a beauty standard, you have to remember it's tied to an uptick in right-wing politics because it intersects with capitalism and austerity politics. And also, obviously, with racism, but also with patriarchal beauty standards that link like purity and thinness and youth. And that also that the political right-wing Republicans weaponize their view of thinness as a beauty standard against the political left, like constantly, and that we on the left need to be conscious of that as well. So, and ableism, yeah, it's tied to all of these things. Yeah, it was about royalty, but someone said you were a Marxist. Yeah, I'm a Marxist. Yeah, that's true. Do we hire artists? No, we usually do art in-house. I'll do it, or sometimes Lizzie from our team will do it. Like Lizzie does 3D art, and then I'll do like little drawings and stuff. So we just do it all in-house. Yeah. I might get out of here in 5 minutes, but if the convo gets interesting, I could be convinced to stay for 20. I don't know. No, we're not hiring right now. Dude, the economy's fucked right now. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but it's a really rough first quarter. Really rough. Not just for us, for everybody. My hoodie is from David Nth, the tattoo artist. Do you guys know David? He's a sweetheart. He's friends with my best friend here in LA, and he makes these awesome hoodies. You've probably heard me talk about this hoodie before, because when I first got it, I was like, oh no, it's the only hoodie that's better than mine. But it is 100% cotton, and nobody ever believes me when I say cotton falls apart fast, and I've been wearing it so much. It's already starting to fall apart, and I'm sad. Because he only makes them in like really limited runs, and he doesn't even sell them. He just like gives them away to his friends. It's really funny. He's the guy who's on, no, it's a different David. Everybody's named David. I don't know, every man in the United States is named David. I have no clue why. No, he's different. Have I gotten any new tattoos recently? I think the last tattoo I got was a matching tattoo with somebody I'm dating. That's a Be Quiet and Drive tattoo, a Deftones tattoo. And mine says Be Quiet and theirs says Drive because it's each something we don't know how to do. I am 38 years old. I'm turning 39 in August. I'm still here. I don't know. That actually sounds familiar. It's a Brazilian movie? I'm not sure. Okay. How long have I had bangs for? I'm a bangs person. I usually have bangs. I'm a bangs person. Anytime I try not to have bangs, I always feel weird. TikTok ban thoughts, I have no idea. I just feel like I feel like it's an emotionally abusive relationship at this point. Like, they're going to leave, they're going to give it back. I don't fucking know. It's so weird. Any pronouns are fine. I prefer they, but I'm okay with any. Okay, I can talk about dating. You guys want to hear me talk about dating? I love talking about dating. I think I'm really good at dating. Nobody else agrees, which is funny. I am dating 2 people right now. They are both non-binary. One of them lives in New York and one of them lives in LA. One is a bartender, one makes music and has a coffee company that they just do themselves, like a single person thing. And also works on airport engineering projects, something like that, for airports. Who are you going to pick? No, I'm not monogamous. I don't have to pick one. They're fine. They're both fine with each other existing. I'm allowed. So yeah, the one in New York, I've actually known for a long time, and then we didn't date for a long time because of the distance, then we reconnected, so that's like cute, and they're very wholesome. They actually have a really interesting backstory. Their parents like were socialists, so they grew up on like a socialist commune in the woods, which is really cool. And then now they work as a bartender, and they're the nicest person in the world. Like literally the nicest person like the kindest person in the world. Like this is a person I say taught me how to be nice when I was 22, because I was so aggressive about everything all the time. I'm still aggressive. I'm still defensive. That's the thing. It's like, I don't start shit with people now as an adult, but if people start shit with me, like I stand my ground, you know, I'm like, no, that's not right. And I know I'm not going to capitulate to that. Fuck you. But they're the ones who actually taught me not to start shit. They're like, yeah, for sure, you have a right to get mad about things if you want, but maybe you don't need to all the time. Maybe you learn to let things go sometimes because it makes people around you more comfortable and they matter too. And I was like, okay, fine. So they, I think, helped me a lot and like self-growth in my 20s. So yeah, we've reconnected. They're awesome. I met them. I used to have a store. I had like a co-op store in San Francisco. Most people don't know this. This is the first business I did with 2 other people, and we all worked in it together and we all owned it equally. And I was working in the store one day, and this like hot party girl I knew. People also don't understand that I'm a party girl. Girl, I use the I as a star. Girl. It's, you know, not woman girl. Girl is a vibe. So yeah, people really don't understand that I'm a party girl at heart. So this San Francisco party girl came in to like see the store, and she was like, oh, I like brought my friend. And the friend I like instantly felt like this magnetic attraction to. And I think they felt it too. And we were just like drawn to each other. It was like very, very weird. And the first thing I did is I put my hands in their mouth and I like pulled their lips apart to look at their teeth. Yeah. And I didn't know them before. I knew the girl I knew from being out and around. Party lifestyle, party friend. But this was my first time meeting her friend. And I did the fingers in the teeth, and they had a gap in their teeth. And I was like, diastema, because that's the term for the gap in your teeth. And they're like this, and they're like, diastema. And I was like, I have one too. And then after that, we just like fell in love super fast. We were like 22. And we dated for 6 months, and then I moved to LA. And that was that. And it was really, really hard. So then we didn't really talk for years and years and years until recently. The other person I met on Hinge randomly. You guys might remember my last boyfriend of 9.5 years I met on Tinder. So it feels good to be non-monogamous after being monogamous for so long. I'm not upset that I had that experience with my last partner, because my last partner's a really good person. Like, I care about him very much. I love him very much. And I'm sad that we couldn't find a way for us both to be happy. But ultimately, we were very different people. And I think that like one of the things about us is that we liked each other so much. We kept trying to make it work, but we just weren't ultimately that compatible, you know, which is hard when you like somebody. I liked him for the differences he had from me, things that were different. I liked that, but it's hard to build a life with somebody like that. So, you know, okay. Yeah. So the other person I met on Hinge. So I was like, that's it. Like, relationships over, time for a slut era. Like, I'm ready. So I signed up for Hinge. I also signed up for Field, but I never checked it. But it's really funny because there's a whole Reddit thread like, is this really Madeline Pendleton on Field? Ah! People are losing their minds about it. I'm like, I'm not going to reply, but that is really me on Field. Yeah. Very weird having an internet presence. I forget other people think I'm like a celebrity. And I'm like, what? I'm just like a normal person. What are you talking about? So yeah. So I got on Hinge, and literally like the first week I was on Hinge, you know, on Hinge you have to set your algorithm. You have to train your algorithm. So I was like setting like my algorithm up, blah, 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 blah. And then I like matched with a bunch of people to be like, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this. And then out of all of the people I matched with, I like had some conversations, and I was like, okay, there's 2 people here that I could have long-term fulfilling romantic relationships with probably for the rest of my life. All right. And I knew that instantly. And one of them was in New York and one of them was in LA. And the one in LA, I was like, oh, I guess we're on a date. And we went on our very first date, and I was like not trying to be in a relationship. I was like, I'm trying to be single and have fun. And on the first date, I was like, yeah. And I even made a joke. And I was like, well, this seems like it's going well. We'll probably date each other for 5 to 6 years and have a very emotionally fulfilling connection. And I was almost disappointed because I was like, yeah, it's perfect. You're great. You're amazing. We're super compatible. We get along awesome. I really wasn't looking for a partner. I was looking for fun, but they're fun too. So yeah, that was 3 months ago that we met, and super good, really positive, excellent bond, going really well, no complaints, super in love, like very obsessed, like, oh no, it's perfect. Yeah, so oh, it's good. It's going really well. Yeah. And we're like, you know, trying to pace things to be slow. My friends say I'm bad at dating. I think because they don't think I'm bad at dating for myself, but whenever I give them advice, they're always like, I'm not doing that, you know? And I'm like, really? Because I think you should do it. They like hate it. They like ask me questions and I'll give them my advice, and they'll be like, oh, what the fuck? Are you crazy? And I'm like, well, yes, but also I think this works. Like, I'm really good at finding people I'm compatible with to date, you know? So I don't know. Why go on Hinge for fun? It's specifically for dating. Why not go on Tinder for fun? That's not true. On Hinge, no. Lots of people have their relationship type that they're looking for being like short-term or casual. People say that all the time. Okay, my advice, my dating advice. Here it is. Number 1, you should never have a list of requirements. If you have a list of requirements for people you date, you're probably doing it wrong. You should go off vibes only at first. That's my advice. Vibes only. Sometimes you can tell people's vibes, and it's not like you have a list of requirement. Like, I don't have a list of requirement where I'm like, can't love Donald Trump. That's fucking obvious. If you meet me, the first thing we say to each other will be a fight. You know what I mean? Or it's going to be a fight instantly. The vibes are going to be off. I don't even have to have that as a list. I just know the vibes are going to be fist fight. If you're like super blue MAGA, like if you're just like, Hillary Clinton's done nothing wrong, I'm like, we're going to fight now. And the vibes are going to be atrocious. So I don't have a list like that, but I go off vibes. Like there was somebody that I was talking to that I was like, oh, this is interesting. We should hang out. And then they said something about Taiwan in a weird way. And I was like, we're going to fight if we hang out. The vibes are off. Just done with that, right? So do not have a list of requirements. Now, some of the things you don't even need a list because you just know. You're just going to know the first time you talk to them, like, vibes atrocious, right? Hopefully you guys are out here knowing when somebody has atrocious political vibes. From there, the other things people tend to have is a lot of superficial things on their list, right? So the superficial things, like I have friends who are like, has to be over 6 feet tall. And I'm like, that's ridiculous, first of all. Like, most people aren't over 6 feet tall. Like, it's a very small, you're already limiting your dating pool so much. And they're like, well, I dated short guys too, and they were also assholes. So if I am going to date an asshole, why not date a tall asshole, at least if I'm attracted to tall people? And I'm like, okay, for sure. May I present a third way of interpreting this situation, which is just that, like, you're not going to get along romantically with most people you meet, regardless of their height. But you shouldn't limit them based on their height either, you know? So that's one of the things. I'm like, if you have any like superficial requirements like that, I don't think dating's gonna go well for you. Also things about like how much money somebody makes. That's pretty obvious for me. But again, people underestimate that I'm a party girl. I hang out with a lot of party girls. That's like my friend group. Like sometimes I'll be talking to somebody, I'll be like, this friend has such woman problems. Like she's like a woman. She's like Sex in the City. And her problems are women problems. You know, heightism is kind of racist. Okay, you know what? Since you said it, I'm going to agree with you. I think it is. I think it is kind of racist. Yeah. So, is it hard to party while masking? It depends. So I am an imperfect masker. There are some events where people do mask, and I will mask at those events. There's some that I don't. But the thing that I do is I have the molecular COVID test kits, because masking has always actually... It's been challenging for me with OCD and ADHD. When everybody masked, it was easier for me to mask because it was a visual reminder for the ADHD that I could be like, oh, mask on. And then as masking became less popular, it became harder and harder for me to remember. So the funny thing too is sometimes you'll see me out in public and I'll literally have a mask on my wrist and I just like have forgotten to put it on. So I started to realize that as people masked less, it was harder for me to remember to mask as well. And one of the things I started to do instead was to regularly do the at-home molecular testing. It is really expensive though. So I'm only able to do this because I have an income level that allows it. Do you guys know the tests that are like basically a PCR test, but it's not a PCR test, but they have that level of accuracy? Have you guys seen those tests? I can show you guys mine if you want. COVID is still here. Yeah, that's one of the things. I hate it when people act like COVID isn't here. COVID is here. It is everywhere. It is real. So I instead, since I can't trust myself to be a reliable masker, I tried to build in other protection things, and I regularly COVID test, which is funny because nobody else does. You know, when I'm like, hey, you guys are regularly COVID testing? Like, I do. And I use the, I'm just going to show you. Hold on. Oh, it might, okay, hold on. I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is what I do since I know myself. And this is the thing I always say with ADHD. Know yourself, know your limitations, and build things that are reasonable for you, that are real, that will work for you. So this is the metrics reader. I keep it in its box still. It's really good. So these are a different kind of test. It's a molecular test. So it has the same accuracy rate basically as the PCR. And it's kind of fun. You feel like a scientist when you use it. It has a little cartridge. The only thing is the tests are $25 each. So I try to do one once a week, and it's $100 a month. And I know that's like a big budget thing for a lot of people, basically. But yeah, it's like this little device here. And he plugs into the wall. And it's like you're a little scientist. And then the cartridges go in here, and the cartridges are funny. You like spit in these cartridges and you put them in. So when I bought I've had this for a while. I bought it. It was $100, and then I got a 4-pack of tests to start out for $100. So it's a big upfront investment. And then you can order the test to be shipped to you pretty regularly, like on auto renew. And I do that. I will say sometimes the tests are like on back order because they're really popular. So it is good to have a little reserve of them if you can. It tests for COVID. And it tests for COVID with like a 99.99999% accuracy rate. So it's better than just like the regular tests you get, and it works for all the variants. Like, you know, some of the, what are they called? What are the other, they're not the PCR tests. They're the ones that are the over-the-counter ones you get at like Walgreens. I can't remember the letter acronyms, but those aren't great at catching all the variants, and they're not super reliable. These ones are like almost 100% reliable. So I use these a lot. I've used them for a long time, and I have had friends who are immunocompromised, and I do this because I do like to go out and party. If I'm going to see a friend, especially one who's immunocompromised, I'm like, oh, cool. I can just do this test. I know it's like 100% accurate before the rapid tests. They're not that accurate anymore. Right. So these ones are accurate, and they call it like having a mini laboratory at your hands, basically. So that's something I do because I feel like it's very easy and it's like a routine. And I feel like with ADHD, having a habit and a routine is really important. So, you know, that's what I do. And I do recommend it. If you also struggle, like I said, I was like a perfect masker when everybody was masking. I was like, it's not coming off. But then once people stopped wearing them, and people in LA stopped wearing them pretty fast also, because we had this weird phase for like 6 months or like 3 months where our COVID cases were virtually zero. Maybe 3 months, maybe 3 months is too. Maybe it was only a month. And everybody was just like, yay, the numbers dropped to zero. But then they like shot back up again, obviously. But after that, everybody in LA, like a lot of people stopped masking, and it became very, very hard for me to just remember because my fucking brain is broken. So I was like, all right, this is easy. The test kit, it's called the Aptitude Metrics Reader, and you can get them on their website, or you can get them on the Great Satan. They used to have them. I only know about the Great Satan having them because one time their website was sold out, and I got, for the tests, the cartridges that go in, so I had to get the tests on the Great Satan. I wouldn't recommend that though. You can go on their website instead, the aptitude metrics reader, and it's really good. I really like it. Oh, the advice. Sorry. See, ADHD. I can't even finish advice. Okay. All right. No list of requirements when you're going into dating. All right. So that's number one. And then number two, I would say meet people as fast as possible. Don't have prolonged conversations with them before meeting them in person. So this also ties into number three, which is that when you're looking at pictures of people on dating apps, just decide if they look good enough to you. If you're like, I could be attracted to this person, maybe. And don't get too hung up on it, because the thing about attraction, and like this has been confirmed with studies, is that you actually are really bad at guessing who you're going to be attracted to on just based on pictures. So you can look at somebody and be like, yeah, that person's super hot. And then you meet them in person and you won't be super attracted to them. Like, because when people are moving around, their energy, their vibe, like all this stuff contributes to attraction that you can't tell from a still photo or even from like a video online. So, and similarly, you can see a picture of somebody and be like, whatever. And then you meet them in person and you're like, whoa, this person is so attractive to me. So don't get too hung up on people's pictures. What I always try to do is just go off their style and be like, yeah, this person looks like somebody I'd have something in common with, who knows, that kind of a thing, because you can't guess accurately who you're going to be attracted to. Similarly, with keeping the conversations short and trying to meet people fast, is that conversations back and forth don't necessarily translate to real life chemistry either. And you don't want to waste your time talking to somebody for 2 weeks and then you meet them and you go, ugh, like, no. So yeah, I think that is really, really important. So no list of requirements going in. Don't be too picky with how people look. Don't waste too much time talking to people before you meet them in person. Meet people as quickly as you can in person to suss out their vibe. Try to have short dates to suss out their vibe. Like, even if you have to lie, just be like, oh, I have like 30 minutes to grab a coffee. Are you free? Keep it short. Have like a time limit where you're like, I got to be out of here at 1:30 or whatever, and just bounce. That's going to be helpful. And the goal is to meet a lot of people, right? Meet as many people as possible, basically. The next thing, which was like a really big learning experience for me in my last relationship, is to not make too many compromises. I think like a lot of people tell you relationships are about compromises, and a lot of people have actually really fucked up ideas of relationships, even people who've been in long-term relationships. Like, I think one of the reasons why me and my last partner were together for so long, even though we weren't super compatible, is that both of us grew up in a culture that told us that dating was compromising people. So we would just like compromise for each other over and over and over again. And eventually it was like, holy shit, we're not even compatible. And then when I started dating other people, like the new person I'm dating, I'm like, I don't have to compromise anything. We just like are compatible, and you can find that. So you don't have to compromise a lot for a relationship. I think also this one always pisses people off when I say it, but I think it's true. If your relationship is taking work, it's probably not the right relationship for you. Like a little bit of work, maybe. But people who are like, relationships take work, it's so much work. I don't think they're supposed to take work. I don't. This is what I've learned after being in a relationship that was good and positive and took a little work, and then meeting people and being like, this is easy and effortless and this takes no work. I don't think they're supposed to take work. I think that that's a remnant left over from like a patriarchal nuclear family system where a lot of people, especially women, felt trapped in these relationships. And you'd have to justify it to yourself. And you'd have to be like, my life's not that bad. I'm not going to walk into the ocean. That's the example I always give, right? So I don't think it's supposed to take work. I think that if your relationship takes work, it's probably not the right one for you. So I think for most people, the balance is between being too picky, right? And settling. And I think that's the thing that's hard for most people. So I'm not too picky. I say that. I'm not too picky within my group of people, but if I like somebody, sometimes I will find myself compromising so much that we both end up settling, and that's not positive either. So that's that. The next thing I'm going to say really doesn't work for people. I think, though, if I didn't have super duper in love feelings, like head over heels in love feelings with somebody, I would not commit to having a long-term relationship with them at all. Because I feel like the second somebody comes along that you do have those feelings for, the whole relationship's out the window. And I think but I would say that even if you are dating in a monogamous way, you do have that option as long as you communicate it, even if it's just with one person. If you're like, yeah, I'm looking for something that's like maybe more serious, and I don't think that's going to be it for us, but we can hang out and have a good time. like for a few months if you're down for that. And the funny thing is that like most people are probably going to be okay with that. Like people are way more open to different types of experiences in dating than we think. Like we think of dating in this very narrow prescriptive way, but the reality is if you know what you want and you articulate it, a lot of times you'll find people are pretty down, even if it's not super traditional. And if they're not down, they'll tell you, and that's it. So, you know, I think there's more flexibility in how we approach relationships, even if you're a monogamous person, than we tend to think about. And I think that lots of people don't take advantage of that flexibility, you know? I'm a Republican? No, I'm not a Republican. I'm a communist. I'm the opposite of a Republican. Why? So yeah, those are my big dating tips. You know, the newest person I met on Hinge, and I could tell. It was really like, I was like looking and I was like, okay, this person's like into electronic music. But I could tell they used to be into punk shit too. And I could tell just like from weird ways. I was like, the way your jeans are rolled up in this, I can tell that you've ridden a bicycle through a city and had to beat down a car with your U-lock before. Because that's the way bike punks roll their jeans. Like, this is the kind of shit where I'm like, we're going to have, like, I don't like electronic music that much, but I knew we'd have shit in common just from the way they rolled their jeans. So shit like that where I'm like, yep, there's going to be something here. And also, I have found that dating non-binary people is already an instant leveler for me. I had this friend who I actually need to text back. If you were my friend. Okay, yeah, we're back. I have this friend who I need to text back, who I haven't texted in like 2 months because I've been so stressed out. So if you're seeing this, hi, I love you. I'm going to text you back. I promise. It's just because I'm falling apart. Yeah. So they were the ones that were like, no, fuck it. I'm T for T at this point. Like I don't mess with anybody who's cisgender. And I was like, interesting. That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. And then I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to date all binary people then. And it's been really cool. That's working for me a lot. So I'm into that. Yeah. You know, it's good. Okay, what else? I like talking about dating. Would I ever date a Democrat? I would date somebody who was not too committed to being a Democrat. Somebody who was like, oh, I just hadn't considered it. This is just what I thought you do. Definitely, but I would not date like a blue MAGA type. Like I couldn't date somebody who knew what Hillary Clinton was up to and still supported her. Like if you know what Hillary Clinton did in Libya and you're like, love her, queen, icon, we can't fucking date. But if you're like, I thought Hillary Clinton was cool. And then I'm like, do you know what she did in Libya? And you're like, no, we could probably date. You know, because ignorance is not a sin, I don't think, unless you're willfully ignorant. But just not knowing things isn't a crime. And I think a lot of people are Democrats because they don't know what's going on and they're told these are the good guys. And they're like, oh, okay, these are the good guys. And I think that I know how long it's taken me to research and learn things politically that I wasn't formerly aware of. And I'm constantly doing it. It's always a process. So I know how much work goes into developing a well-informed politic. And I'm struggling every day to become more well-informed and develop even more well-informed politics. So I can't hold that against anybody for not knowing things. And I think that a lot of Democrats are like that. They don't know. Or they're so caught in a localized experience. Like, I know people who live places like Louisiana where being a Democrat does feel revolutionary compared to what their neighbors are up to. And you're so caught up in your day-to-day because your asshole bigot neighbor might hate crime you and all these like very real world experiences are happening around you every day that sometimes it's hard to zoom out and view yourself big picture as an American who's part of a global community. So I'm sympathetic to those people as well. It doesn't mean I don't think you don't have the responsibility to do that if you're an American. I do think you have the responsibility, every American, to think about yourselves as part of a global community. But I'm sympathetic to people who are in those experiences where they live. It does feel revolutionary to even just be a Democrat. And I get how that could shape their worldviews. So I'm patient with that. So that's basically what it is. What did I write about in my book? What did I? Let's see. I don't remember. Who else? Who's Jay? What else? I'm missing everything. Non-monogamy seems difficult. How do you make it work for everyone? It's easy. For me, it's what comes default. And for the people I'm dating, it comes default to them too. So I think if it feels like work for you, maybe it's not for you. And that's okay. You know? Do I feel safe immediately meeting people from Hinge? I have a real don't fear your neighbors kind of outlook on the world. The other night I was at this, I don't know, like electronic music thing. I know so little about electronic music, I don't even know how to categorize it. It was like techno. And I said that to the person I was dating, was like, techno? And they're like, we've never been to a techno event. And I was like, all right, okay, not techno, electronic music. So whatever. So I went to one that was down by Skid Row. And I left the event 2 times. Once to go use a bathroom because they only had a porta potty. And then another time to go buy beverages for some people who were like working the show. And both times I left, everybody was like, we'll walk with you. Are you okay? Do you need... And I was like, what? No, I'm just walking a couple blocks away. I'm going to be totally fine. And everybody seemed like really weirded out by this, that I was just walking around Skid Row at like midnight or something, or like 2 a.m. And even some really nice women who lived in Skid Row were like, sweetie, baby, are you okay walking around in a mini skirt right now? And I was like, I'm okay, thank you. And they're like, okay, don't worry, we're looking out for you. You know, and I think that that's just like how I live my life. And that's not to deny, like, I've been unhoused. I understand that unhoused women experience a lot of violence. They experience disproportionate levels of violence. So it's not to say that there's not real danger in the world, especially in those areas, in those communities. Skid Row, if you're not from LA, is a community of unhoused people. But I think that the way I choose to live my life is to not fear people. I think that's politically important to me, to not just fear people without a reason. You know, and so if I see somebody like on the street, no matter what, I'll talk to them. I'll just say hi to them. If there's been times where I felt like I was being followed, I turned around and approached them. And I was just like, hey, how's it going? What's up? And, you know, that's worked well for me. I've been fortunate. I had a friend once tell me that one of the reasons why I can approach life without fear is that I don't look like I have anything worth taking. And I thought that was really funny. Like, if you looked at me, it's like, what are you going to get if you rob me? Nothing. Like, there's not really a motivation, I don't think, to hurt me. I'm really annoying. People don't want to be around me probably because I'm annoying. You know, it's not, I don't know. Yeah, even like there were some guys in front of a liquor store that were like, oh, where are you going? Are you at that warehouse thing? And I was like, yeah. And 2 of them were like, we're going to come with you. And I was like, nah, that's cool. You don't have to come with me. And one of the guys was like, no, I want to come with you. Like, I want to get to know you. Like, who are you? What are you about? And I just like talked to him. And I was like, haha, no, you don't. I'm annoying. You don't want to get to know me. But, and then we were like, have a good night. Bye. And it was totally fine. So I think that that's, you know, maybe a personal decision I make. Like, I try not to live my life with that kind of fear. I try not to fear my neighbors. And I try not to do anything that I think gives credence to like the need for the carceral police state as it exists in the United States today. Basically, that's it. So, ostrich races. How many times do I have to block you? Once. Please do. Famous last words. I don't know. I don't like this. Okay, here's the thing. If you exist with this idea that there's a series of magic steps you can do in society to keep you safe, you're inherently victim blaming. Like, that's what that means. That means that anybody who's been harmed in society was harmed because they didn't do the magic steps to keep themselves safe. And that's bad. That's bad thinking. Second of all, it's not grounded in reality of how violence tends to happen, especially against people who look like me. Like, I present as a woman in society. The reality of violence against women is that it's not stranger danger violence the majority of the time. It's men we know. The person statistically most likely to harm me is my romantic intimate partner, 100%. So, you know, I'm very specific about the people that I try to date in that way, you know, with the vibes, where I'm like, the vibes are really important. Like, I meet a lot of people really fast. Like, I'll meet you right out of the gate. And if the vibes are off, I'm not messing with it. That kind of a thing. For sure. The people that are just out in the world, though, statistically are not the people most likely to harm me. And I think that upsets a lot of women to hear. And that doesn't mean that stranger danger violence against women doesn't occur. It does occur, but it's statistically not very common. And I think it's actually important that we acknowledge that, because as long as we're not acknowledging that, we're not doing anything to actually stop systemic violence against women, which is usually domestic violence. It's usually current or former intimate partner violence. And I think that's also important to realize, because it allows the men in your life to get away with this reputation of being the good guys, the defenders. And they're often not. often the men in your life are the ones that will harm you. And it also leads to that thing where when a man in your life does harm you, other people are like, but I know him. He's so sweet, you know? And it's like this whole fucked up idea. And it also leads to, I mean, look, like our criminal justice system is super fucked, but in the society we exist in, it is the only recourse when people harm you, right? So lots of people who are victimized, lots of women who are victimized in like criminal assaults, basically, will turn to the criminal justice system because it's the only recourse they feel that is available to them. And there's this term that I'm not going to say on here because it's very, very vulgar, but lawyers use that. And they use it ironically, and it's called the R word, the RPE word, right? And it's a problem they run into in jury settings because we have so kind of lionized this idea that stranger danger violence is how violence against women happens, and rather than focusing on how it really happens, which is usually men, you know, that juries will not convict men of assault if it's not real, and real to them is the idea of a masked man jumping out of a bush and attacking you. So this is a real issue. So our failure to address the true systemic nature of violence against women leaves women basically SOL. Like without recourse, with people not taking their story seriously, it denies the patriarchal structural nature of violence against women. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And also there's a flip side to it too, which is that men are more likely to be physically attacked by strangers, other men, right? Men aren't as likely to be attacked by people they're in romantic relationships with, and especially not women. But basically, yeah, if a man sees another man on the street, it's like this weird hyper masculinity thing, and they will be more likely to be attacked by a stranger, and it is a man. Women are more likely to be attacked and harmed by men they know, who they trust. And I think that is very sinister and something we need to talk about. So, you know, I'm not too afraid walking around on the street. Statistically, I don't think I need to be. I am very careful about what types of men I allow to be romantically close to me, though. Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial, I learned we really don't understand violence against women. It's true. We don't. It's totally true. Yeah, women thinking they're going to be kidnapped in the parking lot. I think that there's a huge stranger danger culture on the internet that feeds into this fear. It fearmongers. It's literally fearmongering. You know, and I think that that's a problem. I think people do it for views. I think people fearmonger because it's engaging content, right? It's the same reason people are really into true crime podcasts. It's engaging, horrific content, but it's not necessarily good for people, and it distracts people from the real threats around us in the world. You never know what people are like behind closed doors. That's totally true. So I had this friend in LA for years. For years, I had this friend. Probably 10 years. Knew him since I was like 18 years old. More than 10 years, thank God. I had this friend for like 15 years. And one day I walked into a bar and there was a bartender working that I didn't know. And I was like, oh my God, my friend used to work here. Do you know him? And I said his name. And she was like, that's not your friend. And I was like, what? And she's like, that's not your friend. That's not your friend. I used to date that guy. That guy beat the shit out of me and left me to die in the middle of like the desert, like by a lake. Like, that's not your friend. That's not a good guy. Don't let that be your friend. And I was like, fuck, all right, that's not my friend. And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. Yes, that's not my friend. I'm not friends with people who do that. Like, what? No, you're right. That's not my fucking friend. And she was so surprised. She's like almost started crying. She was like, he was so popular around LA. Like when he lived here, like nobody believes me. And I'm like, why would I not believe you? I don't know him. He was my friend. I didn't date him. I don't know what it's like to date that guy, you know? And I think that's like a really important mindset we need to have. Like, just because I knew that guy socially, just because I knew him in a party lifestyle, just because he was friends with some people I dated, he was really nice to me. Doesn't matter. I don't know what it's like to date that guy. And she did. And that's all it took. I was like, all right, done. That's not my friend. You're right. So, you know, it is important to remember we don't know what people do behind closed doors. Yeah. Yeah, what else? I don't know. Prison abolition and crimes against children. Yeah, I mean, okay, so the first thing I think people need to understand is that theoretical feelings about our criminal justice system are fine and dandy, but you need to view every feeling you have about the criminal justice system through the lens of how the United States government operates today. So just like, you know, Black men are disproportionately more likely to be incarcerated for crimes against white women. That's a real thing we know, right? There's like all the statistics. Like if a Black man's accused of committing a crime against a white woman, disproportionately more likely to be in prison. For Black women, the way that this manifests is crimes against children. So, and this is like the whole thing about CPS and the foster care system plays into this. So I think you guys maybe saw the story recently that just came out where this happened to a Black man, a Black parent though, who left his 3 kids inside of McDonald's for an hour to go to a job interview. And he had I think a 10-year-old, maybe it was the oldest. And the 10-year-old was in charge of the 2 younger ones. And he was just gone for an hour. And then he was arrested for child endangerment, which is wild because when I was 10 years old, I had a half brother and I would stay home with him and babysit him for an hour, 2 hours at a time. That was considered very normal. So that kind of weaponization of child safety against marginalized people, and in particular Black women usually, but also Black parents in general, is a major thing. And the majority of, I believe this is still true, but this is a statistic I previously saw, was that the majority of Black women get incarcerated based on crimes against children, which are usually trumped up weird things like that if a white person was doing them, nobody would bat their eye. I'm sorry, nobody would bat their eye at a white child in suburbia who's 10 years old watching their 5-year-old sibling for an hour. I don't think that anybody would call CPS on them, So I think that kind of stuff is really important to think about. You can't form your opinions about what should happen to people who harm children without taking into account the history of how our ideas of the safety of women and children are weaponized against people we deem political enemies of the state. And another really good example of that is the Satanic Panic of the 80s. Great example of that. The Satanic Panic was weaponizing the safety of children to incarcerate gay people and goths. And if you were a gay goth in the 80s, oh man, you better watch out. And they did this. They literally took children and they implanted false memories of them and said that all the gay people in town were assaulting them. And they used this to lock up gay people in prison. And this happened in many towns across the United States. And also a few towns it was some goths. And there was actually no foundation for this whatsoever. So I think it's important, for us to remember that our political system, it's not a theoretical vacuum. It exists built on all of these legacies of white supremacy, on homophobia and bigotry and bias. And these systems are wielded against vulnerable people. And you have to be aware of that when you have these conversations. Is it different if they're left in public, though? Am I missing something? I mean, to me, a McDonald's for an hour, it's not, there's 3 kids. I don't think it's that different. To me personally, that doesn't seem weird. I mean, at 10 years old, for reference, I was riding my bike after school down to the Taco Bell. I would save up my lunch money and I would ride my bike after school to go eat at Taco Bell by myself or with my friends at 10 years old. I would ride my bicycle all around the neighborhood at 10. So doesn't seem that weird to me. I don't know. It's not, for kids to be in public spaces doesn't seem weird to me at all. I mean, I would be at that Taco Bell for hours. I would be there. They had this little game where it was a spinny thing and you would drop coins in and it was this thing of water and there were different platforms. And if you got a coin on certain platforms, you could win food. And I would just do that for hours, So I think that kids not being allowed in public space is also part of this and it's weird. Yeah, well, some McDonald's, they used to have more play structures, but yeah. I think the stranger danger thing also contributes to kids not being in public. And I think it's hard. I think that a lot of kids have a hard time getting socialized now. The internet and screens is how people are socialized. And that's something that with the COVID awareness thing, I struggle with because I don't want to sound like a libertarian or a Republican. But one of the things in subculture spaces that me and my friends have been talking about a lot is that people who were teenagers during lockdown never really learned show etiquette. They don't understand how it exists at a show or in a public space. Or one of the things I've noticed too is that younger people, it seems are having a harder time building community because they view community situations as opportunities to engage in reality TV style interpersonal conflict, which is never what community building historically was like in alternative scenes until post-lockdown. And it's very, very interesting because obviously COVID is still here, right? And I think it does behoove people to be COVID conscious in a way that they can. And that's why I do the molecular testing every week or whatever. But I also think that there is a struggle in people not being able to socialize, and that's hard. That's hard. But I think you can socialize. As adults, you can socialize in a mask very, very obviously. There's ways to socialize in a COVID safe way. So the two aren't mutually exclusive. But I do think that there's a lot of issues that come around with people not just not knowing how to engage with other people in IRL settings lately. I've also noticed this too, because sometimes when I tell stories about my life, people think they sound crazy. And I'm like, do you guys not leave your house? And I think a lot of people don't leave their houses. So I don't know. And that's like concerning. So kids aren't leaving their houses. Kids aren't able. Also a thing too is that I think kids need to be able to socialize with each other outside of a parental scope. Like when I think about the stuff I did with my friends when our parents weren't around, like that's really how we like tested the waters, learned our own limitations, like learned autonomy, learned how to trust our own instincts. And if you're not letting your kids go out into the world in places without you around, right, you're really limiting their scope of their development, I think. And that's unfortunate because in other places, kids are allowed to be more in public spaces on their own without parents, but there's this kind of, it takes a village idea where all the adults are kind of looking out for them. And they're like, yes, there's that child, of course, out in a public space. That's totally fine. As I'm an adult, I will make sure that child is safe as long as I can see them. And we don't really have that in the United States. We have a very like, these are my kids, those are your kids, not my responsibility kind of thing, which probably plays into it as well. So it's hard. It's a hard thing to navigate, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that about Japan specifically, that they're pretty good with kids being in public space. If you're testing every week, do you still think you need to wear a mask? I mean, look, here's the thing. In a perfect world, yeah, we probably all should be. Do I? No, I'm not perfect. Definitely not. Definitely not. So it's hard. I test every week because that's easy for me to do and easy for me to remember. In a perfect world, we probably all would be wearing masks. And it's hard too, because when I see people online be like, everyone should be wearing a mask. I'm like, I don't wear a mask all the time, but you're right. You're not wrong. That's like a fair thing for us to hear and know, and that's kind of how, I don't know, that's where I sit on that. It's not perfect. And I think any critique that's like, oh, but you go out and you party and you don't wear a mask. I mean, it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's not ideal. Testing is expensive. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about how I have the molecular test, but it's super fucking expensive. The kit was $100 and then every test is $25. So it's $100 a month to be testing every week with it. But it is like 100% accurate, 99.999% accurate or whatever. So, the only thing that's a bummer is that once in a while the cartridges for the kit will fail and then you're out $25. And you're like, no. And it'll just be like error. And then you're like, fuck, cost me $25. But that's okay. Whatever. Opinion on COVID vaccines and people claiming bad side. I haven't seen anything about that that's real. I don't know. I don't think that's real. Is it? I don't know. I know that certain people shouldn't get certain vaccines because of pre-existing health conditions, but that's for any vaccine and that's really established and your doctor will tell you that. So I think that people are kooky is what I think about that. Do I take medicine for my ADHD? Sometimes when I have access to it. But one fun thing about having ADHD is that it's hard to remember to get the medication and do all the steps to get it because it's like a controlled substance. So you have to do all this shit. You got to do like IRL psychiatry appointments and blah, 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 blah. So I don't always. Sometimes I will for like 6 months or a year. And then sometimes I won't for years. Yes, keeping the house. He's still part owner in it, but I live here. Yeah. When did you come out as non-binary? Was your family supportive? Honestly, I probably just slowly realized I was non-binary on this app, but if you knew me ever, you always heard me say things about gender, about not feeling like a woman, about not feeling like a girl. I don't think it's any surprise for anybody I've been talking about this stuff my whole life and not having terms for it or ways to explain it. There's actually, if you look on my Instagram way back, there's like a screenshot from like 2018 where I'm trying to convince my friend that nobody should ever use gendered pronouns and that my pronouns were now puppy, kitten, snack attack. It's just been a part of me like for forever. So I never like really came out. I was just like, yeah, oh, that's it. Okay, makes sense. And I don't talk to my family that much. I haven't talked to my mom in like 5 years. And I talk to my dad once or twice a year, but I don't think he'd be surprised by that. I mean, I think it just existed in the ether. It wasn't like an announcement. The same thing with my sexuality. It's like, I just was bisexual. It was never a thing, really. So that's it. What happened with my mom? My mom and I have a really complicated relationship. So I went to live with my mom full time when I was 13. And I hadn't really been around her too much before that. And we didn't get along. If you read my book, I talk about it a little bit, but I'm really nice about it. It was really volatile. It was really bad. Like I'd be kicked out of the house a lot. And one of the reasons why I experienced homelessness is because sometimes I'd be kicked out of my mom's house for like months, and my dad was also homeless at the same time, so I had nowhere to go. So it was a challenge, and my mother now is like, that never happened. Because like one of the last conversations I had with her before we stopped talking, I was like, where did you think I went when you kicked me out of the house? Because sometimes it would be for like a month at a time, or, you know, weeks pretty normally. And I asked her, just point blank, like, where do you think I went? And she was like, you went to your dad's. And I was like, no, Dad was homeless. You remember? You know that, because Dad was sleeping on our Aunt Rita's couch sometimes because he didn't have a place to live. So he'd sleep there for a night or two. You knew that. You knew Dad was homeless. So where did you think I went? And then she just kind of froze, and she was like, I never kicked you out. That didn't happen. But like, she adjusted, you know? So I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. That's totally fine. And then the final time we talked was after my grandmother's funeral. I went to Fresno for my grandmother's funeral, and my grandmother had been kind of like a mother figure. It was my dad's mom, and my dad and I, because we were poor, we lived with my grandma off and on a lot, and she was really a maternal figure in my life. So when she died, it was a big deal. And my grandmother and I always politically did not agree. My grandmother was the head of the Republican Women's Committee of Central California. So we would always have these really intense political conversations. And my grandmother did come around on a lot of things. She started campaigning for like gay rights, like towards the end of her life, based on conversations we had had, which was cool. She, even before I was born, there was all these people in Fresno were trying to talk about ways to deal with gang violence, and like they wanted to increase the carceral blah, 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 blah. And she was like, it's way cheaper to just build skate parks. Let's just build skate parks. This was in the 80s. And everyone was like, what? And she's like, the kids will just go to skate parks instead of joining gangs. Just build skate parks and you'll see crime rates go down. And she actually spearheaded getting like a bunch of skate parks built around town. And everywhere she did, crime rates went down because kids had a place they could be. Teenagers had a place they could be without getting into trouble. And I was a teenager who got into trouble and committed crimes too. So I'm not judging them. But I think she's just smart. So she did all these like kind of cool things. But she was hung up on a lot of things. Her main reason she was Republican, the only reason she was Republican really, is because she literally thought abortion was murder. Like, and this is something I could never get through to her. She literally thought abortion was murder. She's like, you are murdering a child. Like, I can't abide that. And she was a single issue voter, and her issue was abortion, and it was wild. So we would always have these really intense political conversations where I try to get through to her on things. And one of the things I always liked is that she was respectful, and she would listen to me, and she would change a lot of her political opinions based on conversations with me. And that was kind of an energy she brought to a lot of people that she was around, which I think a lot of people around her valued. She was able to bring a lot of different people together because she respected people and listened to them. So, you know, whatever. So after her funeral, I was talking to a lot of people who went, and one of them had like worked with her in the Republican Women's Committee maybe, and was like, oh, you don't seem like you're a Republican. And I was like, no, not me, I'm a commie. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm a communist. I'm a commie. And she laughed and she was like, is that real? And I was like, yeah, I'm really a communist. Yeah, we're really out here. We exist. And she was so like, whoa, like what? And then she was like, can I ask you questions? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's talk about it. So we started talking about communism, and it was a really positive conversation, honestly. She was like, I think I just like don't know a lot about communism. I think I was like not understanding a lot of it. Had this really good conversation for like 2 hours. It was super cool. And afterwards, I came home to my mom's apartment. It's not a home I had grown up in. Just, I don't know why I said home, but whatever. I went to my mom's apartment. Condo. She bought a condo. And I was like, yeah, like the service was great. And she was like, oh, okay. Like, tell me about it. And I was like, oh, you know, this happened. And she was like, yeah, what else? And I was like, well, I had this really good conversation with this woman who had worked with grandma in the Republican Women's Committee. And it was actually really positive, and she wasn't like a judgmental weird bigot about shit, and it was like nice. And my mom was like, well, I want to ask you questions about your political beliefs. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to be good for us, because my mother's a libertarian, so we've always politically disagreed. And my mother is not respectful, and she's not a good fighter. She's a bad fighter. She's a mean fighter. She's a name caller, a screamer. She's a bad fighter. And this is a thing I think about a lot too. Some people are good fighters, some people are bad fighters. Some people fight to solve problems, some people fight to be assholes. So she was like, I want to talk to you about it. And I was like, okay, but you should know, like, I just came from my grandmother's funeral. This is a woman who's very, very important in my life, and I'm very emotionally drained. And if you think that this is going to be more than a pleasant conversation and it's going to be an argument, I don't think we should get into this. And she's like, why would it be an argument? It's not going to be an argument. I'm not a monster. Of course I'm going to be respectful. You just came from your grandmother's funeral. And I was like, right, okay, all right, yeah, so we can talk about it a little. So we start talking, and it's not going well. It's going the way things always go. And so Chris was with me, actually, and he just started packing my shit up, like, for me. And, like, loaded up the car, put our dogs in the car, and by the time my mother's screaming at me, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, you know? He comes in, he's like, car's packed, let's go, ready? It's on, it's running. And I was like, thank you! And that's another thing Chris was really cool about. Chris understood my relationship with my mother and saw what was going on and was like, this is bad. And then I left, and then she called me on the phone, and I was like, I don't think I can talk to you literally ever again. And she's like, oh, because I'm such a bad mother, because your father was such a better parent than me. And I was like, no, weirdly, your parenting skills were fine. Your parenting skills were good, but I think you're too unbearable as a person for me to be around. And that was the last time we ever talked. So yeah, that was it. And I don't talk to her. My dad and I are emotionally close, but we both have ADHD, so we forget to talk to each other for like a year at a time sometimes. I don't know any libertarians personally. Yeah, it's a trip. Arguing with a libertarian personally is bad. Yeah, Chris was a very supportive and good partner. Chris is the ideal partner. Like, if you're really into sports, if you like kayaking and hiking and you want to do monogamy and you want to be early to bed, early to rise, Chris is the perfect partner. He's a good dude, you know, he's a solid dude. He's just not chaotic enough for me. I need a little chaos, you know? So, yeah. That's it. That's that. Okay, what else? What else have we got? Yeah, I'd recommend reading the Communist Manifesto. I actually think you should start with Principles of Communism by Engels. I think it's a really easy read. I like it quite a bit. And I think you should read that to start with. How would you introduce communism to liberals, specifically anti-capitalism? What's your speech? It's hard. It's hard because liberals are so defensive all the time against conservatism. And it's hard to make them realize their ideology is conservative. It's like, how do you make somebody realize that they are everything they hate? That's why I think it's harder to talk to sometimes liberals than conservatives. Conservatives know your enemies. They know going in, you know? They're like, yeah, fuck you. And you're like, yeah, fuck you too. But what about this? And they're like, okay, fuck you, but sure, maybe that, you know? Liberals are like, what fuck you? No, fuck you. We're the same. We're the same. We both hate that guy. And when you're like, well, they get really, really defensive and they double down. So I think it is hard. I think it is hard. The thing I always try to talk to people about is facts, and not because I think I'm going to change their mind in that moment, right? I try to give people facts because I think maybe on the first time they've heard this, maybe they'll hear it a few more times. Maybe by the 10th time they hear it, they'll be like, there's something to it, right? And I think most communists, most Marxists started off as liberals. And it's from a place of ignorance. I think that's a pretty common trajectory. You start off as a liberal because you're like, they're the good guys, right? And then somebody's like, hey, did you know they deport more people than Republicans? And you're like, that can't be real. What? And then another person is like, no, it's true. Here's the statistics. And you're like, something's got to be going on that I don't understand. And then somebody else is like, no, it's exactly what you think. Here's some more info. And then eventually, after like 5 years of it, probably you're like, what the fuck? These people are bad. And then, you know, sometimes somebody will come along and be like, yes, because they're all being paid by rich guys. And maybe then at that point, you're receptive to like, oh, they're all being paid by rich guys. Oh, so that's one. I think another thing that liberals tend to be more receptive to is the positioning of the Democratic Party in comparison with the rest of the world. Because I think that liberals tend to like lionize Europe. It's like a white person thing. I don't know. The white liberals lionize Europe. They're like, if only we could be better like Europe, you know? And when you're like, hey, did you know that in Europe, the Democratic Party would be considered a right-wing party? They're like, what? And then I think, though, that's like a talking point that kind of gets through to them when they're like, yeah, we should be more like Europe, where they have actual, you know, socialist representation. Like maybe they're not in charge of things, but you can actually just go out and be a socialist there. And like the Democrats would be right wing there. I think that's maybe an entry level thing too. But it's hard. It's really hard to get through to people. It's hard to change anybody's mind. And I think when you talk to somebody about politics, you have to know you're not going to change their mind in that minute. And you have to just hope that maybe you're the first time they've heard this and they're really resistant, but they're going to hear it again and again and again in their life. And maybe eventually it'll get through, because the way people change their minds is slowly over time. And it's like advertising. It's like you need to see something over and over and over again before the advertising works. That's how information is too. You need to be taught the information over and over again sometimes until it clicks. So think of it as a step on their journey. You're not going to change their mind in a minute, but you are a step on their journey, hopefully, to changing their mind in the future. And I say that as somebody who watched everybody's minds collectively get changed about Palestine almost overnight. Like, you never know what's going to happen, where, like, if you give somebody the primer info for it and then something occurs, all of a sudden they're ready and they're like, okay, I'm now on board with this new shift in how I think. So, yeah, someone who slowly moves further left every year, but conversations matter. Exactly. It's like a slow, progressive kind of thing. Let's see what else we have. Podcasts are pretty much everywhere. It's called Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. You can find a lot about them. Okay, wait. What do we think? There's something interesting. People calling themselves socialists who are anti-communist. I mean, the funny thing, the reason why so many communists are like, just read Marx, oh my God, is that Marx and Engels talked about this in like 1847. There will be people who call themselves socialists who are not actually interested in dismantling capitalist systems. They're interested in reforming them for their own comforts, maybe. And we call them democratic socialists or bourgeois socialists, right? There's a term for them. There's an approach for how to deal with them. Principles of Communism actually talks about them. I really like that as a starter point to talk about these things. So these are people, for whatever reason, the mainstream liberal agenda feels like not enough for them, but they're not actually wanting to fully dismantle the structure and build something better in its place. And it's a really interesting position people find themselves in. Like, they don't actually want to change things. They want to reform it. And they have a hard time reconciling the fact that they are just liberals. And I call these the reluctant Democrats, right? Because they're progressive enough in their heads to be reluctantly supporting the Democrats, but they're still supporting them. So I think that's a really difficult thing. So when people say that they're a socialist now, they say it like, people used to be like, well, I'm a leftist. And then I would always be like, what's your left-wing political ideology? And they wouldn't have one. And then eventually they were like, socialist, because it's a very generic catch-all term. So now I have to be like, what type of socialist are you? What do you mean? What school of socialism are you approaching this conversation from? I want to understand. And they don't have one because they don't actually know what socialism is, you know, just like they didn't actually know what leftism is. And I also want to encourage people too, like, it's okay to use words and realize you've been using them wrong and not know. That's totally fine. It's okay. And if you were a liberal, you can just tell people you're a liberal. Like, I think that there was all these people who were like, I'm not a leftist anymore, I'm a liberal, making all these videos on TikTok that were super incendiary. But the thing is, like, they were always liberals and we knew. And the only difference is now they know and they're calling themselves that. And it's at least intellectually honest. And I think there is value in that, you know, in people being intellectually honest and understanding the positions that they start from. You know, but I think the fact that so many people are eager to denounce the label of liberalism and Democrats, you know, here in the United States as their political party, shows that people are eager for something different. So we just have to show them something different, but they've just been so indoctrinated against communism that it sounds scary. So we got to find a way to be like, it's not scary. It's okay. Come on over here if you want. Okay, why do people have to be a specific socialist? You don't have to be a specific capitalist, because capitalism is a specific ideology. Socialism is not. So, like socialism, Marx used socialism and communism interchangeably. There are some anarchists who consider themselves like anarcho-socialists. They're anarchists. It's just a way of saying that they support social safety nets in their anarchism, or like libertarian socialism, they'll call themselves sometimes. Democratic socialists, they're not actually socialists. They just want capitalism with a bigger social safety net in place. You know, that term actually doesn't mean, it's like an adjective. It's not like an ideology. So it would be like me saying, you know, just any random adjective, but like we don't know what we're talking about. If I was just like purple, you'd be like, what? Purple what? Purple what? What are we talking about? Purple what? And I'd be like, purple. Right? It's like that. It's like it on its own. You have to like understand it in a framework thing. So when a Marxist is like, I'm a socialist, and you're like, what kind of socialist? You'd be like, well, I'm a Marxist. Yeah, you know, I'm a communist, Marxist, socialist, interchangeably, like Marx did. They'll be able to explain it to you, right? There are anarcho-capitalists. You're right. I stand corrected on the anarcho-capitalist front, but they're anarchists. They're a type of anarchist, right? And capitalism is a descriptor for the type of anarchists they are. But it's wild. Yeah, the anarcho-capitalists are wild. So, you know, I think that's why it's important for people. Here's the thing. If you are going to have political opinions in the world, I think that is totally fine. But I think that it is beneficial for you to understand the lens through which you are approaching building those opinions. And if you have not put work into learning a new ideology or a new lens through which to approach those opinions, you are operating off default mode. You're operating off the default mode of the society that you exist in. And the society you exist in is a capitalist one. It's a conservative capitalist one. So unless you've deconstructed that and chosen a different ideology to approach the world through, you're in default mode. Default mode is capitalist. So you're a capitalist unless you've done a lot of work to be like, I'm approaching this from something different. I think we need something different. And I think most people don't realize that. They don't realize that they're like, I don't need an ideology. I'm just here on vibes. But it's like, no, you already have an ideology, whether you acknowledge it or not. Your ideology is capitalism, unless you've worked to deconstruct that, because that's the society you were born into. All your education came through that lens. Everything you think you know about the world came through that lens. And it takes work to unlearn that. And if you have not unlearned that, sorry, it's like you're a fish swimming in water you didn't even know you're swimming in, right? You don't see the water because you're all around it. Okay, question. Do you think that Republicans and Democrats want America? Oh no, I want to know the question. Owning the means of production makes you a capitalist. You are the working. You're right. That was lazy language on my end. You are a person who supports capitalism. That's a fair assessment. That's true. Thank you for that correction. You're right. Sometimes when I talk fast, I am lazy and less precise with my words, and I appreciate those types of corrections. You're a capitalist if you own capital. Correct. Capital, though, is the means of production. How are you socialist when you outsource production labor, Johnny One? Oh, I mean, this is so easy for me. First of all, no business is a completely vertically integrated thing at all. Like, it's not. Like, I work with other companies. I work with Shopify for our web hosting platform. I work with Rollo for our printer label. You know what I mean? It's like we're working with all these other companies every single day. So and they're all laboring in a way that supports our business, right? Because we exist in a system of capitalism. I can't change that. So I am not able to change the structure of the country that we exist in, very obviously. But, I feel comfortable with our manufacturing in China because I know that their system's different than ours. That's a country and a state of socialism led by the Communist Party, right? That's awesome. I feel the best about every company that we work with to make our business run. I feel the best about the factories. I've got no qualms with the factories because they, to me, are existing in the system that I wish we could get to, right? So they are, and I know that they are profiting off of their own labor at the company they work for, which is the factory they work for. They are probably the least exploited people in our entire supply chain, honestly. 90% home ownership rates, bomb labor conditions, February, entire month off, for Chinese New Year. Like, the things that China is doing, especially since 2008, have just been remarkable to me as a person who's paid attention because of my job. So, yeah, I feel proud to support what's going on in China in any way I can. I feel proud to use Chinese labor. When I read our company's SEDEX reports, I'm jealous. I'm like, I wish Americans could experience this type of workplace. It's beautiful. It's amazing. They have workplace councils. They have workplace representatives. Workplace representatives bring grievances to management. Management implements the things from their grievances almost immediately. They get all this paid time off. The lowest age you can work in China, higher than in the United States. The lowest age person who works at our factory is 21 years old. That's the youngest person. The retirement age is like 55. I mean, it's absolutely wild. So yeah, the ways that I can call myself a socialist twofold. One, I exist in a system of capitalism. I'm not able to change that on my own. I still yearn for a system of socialism instead, and I will fight for that. And number two, proud to manufacture in a place where their system is socialism already. So proud of that. Just, yeah, love it. So I was taught kids in Chinese factories are throwing themselves out of windows. Yeah, exactly. That's what people think. Do I think the quality of life in China is worth moving there? They're so conservative. I think it is. I mean, do you guys follow Dante the Hater? Dante just went to China and was like, this area is so gay and cool and blah, 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 blah. I want to go to China. Probably next year I will go. I want to get a little more comfortable with language skills before I go. So, yeah, I don't know how conservative really China is compared to the United States. Oh, your TV package just came. Yay. Oh, yeah. We can talk about North Korea. What do you guys want to talk about North Korea? I don't know any Chinese. No, I need to learn. Some of our manufacturers that I'm more friendly with, they're like, if you come, we can hang out. And I'm like, that would be cool. But they're mostly in Dongguan. And there are other places in China I would want to go. And that's what scares me. I'm like, they would be my translator in Dongguan. But what if I wanted to go somewhere else? I would know how to talk. Okay, yeah. So what you guys want to talk about North Korea? We talk about North Korea. Oh, is North Korea a dictatorship? Okay, so this is a thing that lots of people in the United States don't understand about countries with a communist party. So you have the party and you have the government, and they're two different things. Okay, so the party and the government are different. The government, democratically elected by the people, and they have a really unique form of democracy in North Korea. And one of the most ironic things to me is that in North Korea, their system of elections is one that I think, as somebody who used to be an anarcho-communist, I think anarchists should be stoked on their system of elections. They use a consensus model for their elections. It's wild. It's really cool. So basically what they do is they had the way that the government got started in Korea is that they had a bunch of people's committees that were communist in nature already when Korea was still under Japanese imperial control. They had these people's committees that were localized organizing kind of branches in different communities trying to fight back against the imperial oppressors. And they were all communist already, those people committees. So by the time the war ended and Japan lost and they had to relinquish their imperial power, the United States was terrified because they're like, Korea's going to go commie. The whole Korean peninsula is going to go commie because these people committees are there and they're communist. So the United States kind of pulled their weight, did like this negotiation through the UN, and that's how we ended up with the protectorate of the North under the USSR and the South under the United States to not start basically World War III immediately between the United States and the USSR. But the whole idea obviously was that it was going to be temporary, and then they were going to have one unifying election. So, when the North showed up, they were like, when the USSR rather showed up in the North, they were like, oh shit, you guys are already doing a bunch of stuff we'd recommend doing. And the people were like, yeah, we actually based a lot of our models off of you guys before, like when Japan was still here, because we were really inspired by you. And there's some even funny exchanges where the USSR is like, oh, you guys are like really into us. There's some stuff we did wrong. You maybe shouldn't do this exactly like us. And they're like, oh, okay. Like they talk about like the woman question, for example, like their approach to femininity and feminism. And so the people's committees in North Korea were like, okay, we're going to handle like women's stuff differently. And, there's still like today, there's more government representation of women in North Korea than lots of European countries, right? Which we think of as being like the liberal paradise. But there's still some work to do, obviously. It's not perfectly equal. But that's always been a thing that they've been working towards. So that goes on. And in the South, meanwhile, the United States, as we all know, the brutal military dictatorship, committed genocide on Jeju Island, and Jeju Island was a place where there were a hotbed concentration of people's committees. And they were like, hey, we don't think you're supposed to be here. Like, you guys are supposed to leave. Like, let us control our own country. And the United States basically was refusing to allow the reunifying elections. And they were like, we'll only allow them through the UN. And then the USSR was like, you can't do that. That violates the UN's charter. And the United States was basically terrified because they knew they were not able to squash all these people's committees in the South without brutal military repression, and they knew that the unifying elections would go commie. So they just tried to hold them off as long as possible. Then eventually they were like, we're doing our own elections in the South with this like guy who's like a puppet dictator for the US government, and the North was like, fine, fuck it, we'll do our own elections too. So whatever. So that's the system and what was going on. So when they established the electoral model, what they did is they took these people's committees and that were already existing, and they got them to get a bunch of people from the community, like everybody come, and they would literally sit in a room and they would talk about who they wanted to represent them. They would talk about who they wanted to represent them at this local level, and it was considered a civic duty, and you would sit there and argue with each other for days until eventually you came up with a person that you all felt comfortable putting forward to represent you. And the elections, where it's like, but you can only confirm or deny a name on a paper, that's why. And the election system is a formality because everybody in the community already agreed on the person. The reason the election system with the tally for a yes or no, like, are you happy with this person you chose, exists is so the party can register how on board everybody is, or if people are divided, what's going on there. So, like in one town, for example, they elected a landlord pretty out of the gate. And the party was like, what? We don't super love landlords. Like, what's going on? So they came to town and they're like, yeah, we see you guys did a really divisive thing. Like, maybe we can increase like our education on like Marxist theory here for you guys next time. So they operate as two different things. And the thing the party in North Korea has always said is that, look, we don't get control over who you elect as your government. That's your government. That's democracy. We believe in democracy. You elect who you want. But, the party's job is to maintain the party line, to talk about the goals, to talk about the overall economic structure of the country. Kind of like how we have like the Fed, and the head of the Fed controls like the economic future of the United States. That's kind of like the party does that. They're like, remember, like, we're Marxists. This is like our political and economic outline that we're aiming for. But lots of times the government will be at odds with the party, right? Like the landlord, for example, that's at odds with the party. And they from there will hold elections and kind of promote people up into higher ranks from those local kind of committees. Then they move up the ranks. So you will actually see Kim Jong-un, for example, fighting with like the equivalent of, I can't remember if they call it a president or a prime minister. I always get those terms confused. I'm so sorry. But you'll see them fighting a lot. Like they'll fight publicly. Like Kim Jong-un will be like, you fucked up when you handled this flood situation. And he'll be like, I did not. I did what I thought was right for the people. So based on that information alone, you know it's not a dictatorship. Because if it was a dictatorship, how would they be fighting with each other about the policies, right? So there's like actually flowcharts you can find if you look online about how the government is structured versus the party being structured. And this structure of having a party and the government system, that actually is pretty common in different places that are run by communist governments. Like it's a different governing system, basically, than the United States. So it feels really foreign to us. And like, whoa, what's going on? But it's just a different system than the one we have here. So yeah, I think that pretty obviously if the if the head of the party is fighting with the elected prime minister or president, it's probably not a dictatorship, because that means that person's doing things that the head of the party didn't want to do, and they're different. They're kind of different bodies and entities. There's actually someone I follow on Twitter that I repost a lot of stuff, who is Korean and talks about realities of the DPRK, and I recommend you guys follow. I don't remember her handle right now, but if you go on my Twitter, you'll see I repost her a lot. I probably reposted her like 3 times today alone, and you'll find that. So, interesting. Just because people can argue with him doesn't mean it's not actually true. I think you got it wrong. He's arguing with the guy who made the policies. Do you see what I'm saying? Kim Jong-un is arguing with the guy who's making the policies, and he's critiquing him. He's not the one he didn't do the policies. This guy did the policies, and Kim Jong-un's like, I think you did that wrong, blah, and they fight with each other publicly, but that guy's in control of policies. So Shake Over, hi. Yeah, it's fucking noon. Jesus, how does this always happen when I'm on a live? Blech. All right, we'll do a little bit more, and then I'm gonna bounce off. Do you guys have more North Korea stuff we can talk? I mean, full disclosure, I'm just parroting the stuff that's on my resource doc about North Korea that I've been privileged to learn from other people who've studied this their whole lives, who have done peer-reviewed academic texts on this. These aren't original thoughts that I'm having. Hi. These are facts. These are primary source documents. A lot of it comes from our own government even. So, there are people more qualified to talk to you about North Korea than me. It's the people I learned from. What about hanging photos of Kim Jong-un? I don't know. People hang pictures of politicians in the United States. Like my grandma used to have all these plates with like George Washington's head on them and stuff. I think that's just a cultural thing, right? People just like that. I don't know. I think some people are just into that visually. I don't know. Have you ever studied and explored the culture in the DPRK, like music, movies? Okay, so I've watched some documentaries filmed in the DPRK, and they will like show, like musical performances and things like that I think are really interesting. There's, if they don't save the fun pigs in a fire, they're put to death. Oh my God, I have a timeshare I'd love to sell you. It's not true. That's not true. Okay, let's see. Oh. All right, anything else we got before I start my actual day here? I'm still in pajamas at 12 p.m. God, I really messed up. The kidnapping things. I will say the DPRK has kidnapped some people. I will say that. That part is true and worthy of critique. So basically, the DPRK has kidnapped people from Japan to bring them to Korea to teach Japanese. That is a real thing that has happened. So that's the kind of stuff where you're like, oh, that's not great. You're like, yeah, that's probably not great. We can talk about that. But the other stuff people talk about, I'm just like, what? So, Anything else before we go? Oh, the 2016 execution of the North Korean vice premier, and then he ended up at like a fancy dinner like 2 weeks later, and all the news stories had to recant. Yeah, that was funny. That was wild. How can we tell what's truth and what's propaganda when it comes to enemy states? Well, after the fact, you can tell, right? After the fact, we know, because these documents get declassified, and we're like, oh, fuck. I will say, if you study enough of what the United States has been up to, you do start to see the patterns repeating. So if you've learned enough, there are certain things that you're not going to definitely discount as propaganda unless you know. But there are certain things that like spidey sense. So it's like now anytime I see anything with freedom or democracy in the title, I'm like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? I don't like that. So that kind of stuff. But in general, I would be skeptical. I think a healthy skepticism about anything you hear about a country that's a political enemy of the United States will get you a hell of a long way. You know? So that's what I would say. What about the fact that people are allowed to leave? People leave. There's actually some fun Reddit forums where people are like, oh yeah, when I was in college, there's some people in my dorms who were from North Korea. They were super chill. So yeah, people do leave. The coup America tried in Cuba. Oh yeah, we can talk about that. Which one? They tried so many. Oh, the Bay of Pigs one was wild. There was like a coup attempt and the United States tried to bribe a guy and then he just ran away with the money. That one was pretty funny. One of the more recent coup attempts was when they set up the fake Twitter there and then they hired a bunch of like musicians in Cuba to talk about how much they wished they could be like the Americans, and then I don't know, it was like pretty wild. They used the Twitter to like drive people towards what they tried to create as like AstroTurf to basically protest against the government. And lots of people, nobody knew that it was being run by the United States government, this fake Twitter. They tried to get Jack Dorsey from the real Twitter in on it, and he was like, I'm not getting involved in that. But yeah, the United States has done a lot of coup attempts in Cuba. There's been so many. What else? Didn't Marx say governments would naturally end up as communists? I don't know about the term natural and the use there. Inevitable, but maybe not natural. Like, because part of the inevitability is this idea that people will inevitably revolt. So there's action and agency involved in that. So it's not like a natural thing that just happens over time if you don't do anything, basically. Okay, what else we got? How do you talk to people espousing false info without being condescending? I don't know. They all think I'm condescending. There's no way to be like, who told you that? Where did you read that? Why do you think that? They're going to think you're condescending. I don't fucking know, man. I have no idea. It's weird, though. It's weird how many people are comfortable arguing things that they haven't really researched, that they don't know a lot about, that they haven't looked into a lot. You know? Do you think there's going to be a revolution in America soon? I don't know, man. There's that Lenin quote where it's like, there's years where nothing happens and there's like weeks where years happen or whatever, something like that. You never know what's going to be the sparking point for people to be fed up. So how do people move from denouncing crony capitalism to denouncing capitalism? That's a great question. That's really interesting. I guess you could ask them questions. You know, like, what does capitalism look like to you that's not crony capitalism? Like, how would that function? Like, what are the differences to you? What do you like? You know, I feel like asking people questions kind of leads them to form their own opinions and kind of realize the contradictions in their own things. Okay, so I used to be more critical of Lenin, and then the more time goes on, I'm like, fuck. Yeah, he was right. He's right about like almost everything. Yeah. So I think that a lot of the critiques I used to hold about like minor things about Lenin, a lot of them have fallen by the wayside the more I learn about the world and interact in the world. So I don't know. I'm not prepared to answer that right now. That doesn't mean I don't have any, but it's just not something I've thought about recently. You thought you blocked me, but you didn't. Oh my God, I'm back. Scary. Hurry up. Block me now. Oh my God. God forbid you learn something. I used to critique the approach to anarchists in the USSR. But I think that my views on anarchism are really shifting. And that's as somebody who used to be an anarchist. That's one of my biggest shifts. When I was an anarchist, I still considered myself a communist. I considered myself an anarcho-communist. And then I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. I'm just a communist. But my views on anarchism have become more hostile lately. I'm sympathetic to people who are anarchists because I used to be one, and I think I just didn't, like a lot of people who are Democrats and don't realize what they're supporting. I think that that's my take on anarchism now. So anarchists individually, I think are sometimes chill people who want to do the right thing and don't realize that a lot of the things they're repeating are actually just State Department talking points, like propaganda. I have been that person. When I was a teenager, I would say things and then later come to learn like, oh shit, I was doing the feds work for free. That's embarrassing. So that's been a big shift in my ideology and how I've moved through the world. One of the more recent big shifts is that I've come to view anarchism as a right-wing ideology. I think at its core, it is more individualistic than I previously understood. And the differences between anarchism and libertarianism, to me, are more notional than practical at this juncture. So I think that one of the biggest things that I took away from anarchism that shifted my perspectives on it is learning the conservative approach to charity. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, like a Republican approach to charity, which is this idea that it's like, no, we want to help people. We care about people. We don't want people to starve and die, but we want to be able to do it on our terms as we want without anybody making us help them, which is their like explanation for why they want to lower taxes, but they think you should give more money to your church. And I kind of was thinking about that and I was like, oh my God, fuck. When I was an anarchist, that's almost exactly our approach towards mutual aid. Almost exactly, without a church, obviously, but through whatever. And I thought that was really interesting. And then for a while, I had these neighbors on my block that everybody hated. They were assholes. They were real bad people. They were like bad. Like everybody on my block fucking hated these people. And I remember thinking about them one day and being like, these fucking people. When have you ever heard me talk about anarchists? They don't live rent free in my head. This is probably the third time I've ever talked about anarchists on this app. You guys just say things. So I remember being like, I think that these bad people deserve things. And as somebody who's in community with them, you would have a hard time convincing me personally to take care of them. And I'm probably the most charitable person mentally on this block right now towards them. So if I wasn't here, this whole community would be like, fuck these people. But I think even these people who are not good people deserve fundamental things like housing, healthcare, food. And I think that a lot of anarchism and mutual aid operates on a charity model. And I think the charity model is insufficient. And I think you shouldn't have to be likable in your community to have fundamental basic human needs met. And on top of that, I think that regulation saves lives. I do. I just think regulation saves lives. So I think that's been my biggest come around on it, and viewing anarchism as an extension of individualism, even within like subculture. Because I got into anarchism from punk rock, and punk rock actually can be a very individualistic kind of experience. It's not always. Sometimes it's very community based, but a lot of it can be very individualistic. So I think there's something there that has made me increasingly unsettled with anarchism as a concept as I get older. And I have had to personally reconcile like, oh shit, I think that I did hold a right-wing ideology. And I think it's a little ironic that I was arguing with my libertarian mother all the time because our beliefs were not that different. I remember in a fight, she once yelled at me, libertarians are just anarchists with a gold card. And I was like, no! And now I'm like, fuck. She might have been right. She might have been right. So that has been a big shift for me, ideologically. I don't dislike individual anarchists because I've been there. I get it. It's the same thing with not liking somebody who doesn't know what they don't know and they support the Democratic Party because they're not aware of what's going on. I think there's a lot of that. But I think as an ideology, it is extremely right-wing and individualistic and harmful, you know? So, that's that. I think that they're not, I think the intention to do community support is there. And look, I did Food Not Bombs when I was a teenager. I think Food Not Bombs is a great organization. Again, I think they do good mutual aid work. If you're at a protest, Black Bloc's there, I fuck with that. That's cool. But I think just in terms of bigger picture movements, it's not, I have a lot of complicated feelings about it now that I didn't used to have, Most of the radical actual infrastructure built in the U.S. is built by anarchists. Oh, okay. Like what kinds of things are you thinking about? Like the mutual aid networks? Because that I do agree with. That they, not most of it, but I think they do a lot. Like I said, Food Not Bombs, huge. Food Not Bombs is huge. And I did Food Not Bombs, and that's anarchist. And I think that's a cool thing that anarchists did. So, that's what I personally think. How do we get regulation without government? I believe in government, So that was a big shift for me. I think we need regulation to keep people safe. Everyone deserves their basic needs met, not just perfect victims. Exactly. Yeah. No, I don't consider libertarianism at all. Never. I think it's shit show. Shit show nightmare. I think we are entering recession. I think first quarter numbers just ended, and I think it's down. How many quarters in a row do you have to be? Two quarters down is the technical recession, I think. Yeah, first quarter was pretty fucked for everybody I know. It was hard. First quarter's been hard for us too. CPUSA was behind a lot of the civil rights movement too. It's interesting how CPUSA dropped the Leninism in the 21st century and dropped the vanguardism and went full like revisionist, like very interesting democratic socialism. So I don't know. Very fascinating. Okay, anything else? I'm about to get off. Oh, cynicalism. So I did consider myself a syndicalist. And I will say I did take a lot of syndicalism ideas in structuring our workplace organizations. So I think there's some good stuff to be learned about syndicalism. I have this thing where it's like a joke. It's like a tongue-in-cheek, but I'm radically pro-bureaucracy. Like, I love bureaucracy. I also like Taylorism. I'm like, how do we increase efficiency? Yeah, but for the people, you know? So that stuff kind of correlates with syndicalism in my mind a lot. But I think that can easily be implemented, and it has been implemented successfully within communist frameworks in the past. So I like that. What else? No, I don't think it should be split into different countries. Can you speak on ensuring disabled people are cared for, some people needing more aid from others? That's one of the major things to me that was a downside of anarchism when compared to communism for me personally. I feel that that's the kind of stuff that needs to be, medications need to be regulated, right? There's an insulin in a bathtub argument. You can't make insulin in a bathtub, right? So yeah, I think that communism is better equipped to care for people in that capacity than anarchism is. So that was a big shift in my ideology as well. Taking care of people who are vulnerable and in need. And that's why I'm radically pro-bureaucracy. Like, I like systems. I think, when I critique things, I critique them systemically rather than individually. That's the thing I try to do. And when I think about things that will help us, I try to think about systemic change that will help us rather than individual change that will help us. Individual change isn't bad. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad to do mutual aid in your communities. I don't think it's bad to help your neighbors. I don't think it's bad to help your friends. But I don't think that's enough. I think you need systemic structural change as well. So, that's it. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to jump off live. Thank you, everybody. That was fun. I would not run for office. No. Yeah. Okay. All right. Nothing else interesting. Okay.